Sometimes I'm live and I don't know I'm live. Anyway, I think I'm live. Welcome to a conversation. Welcome to hopefully it's a valuable conversation. If you got a beverage, mine is coffee. You got a beverage, you might want to grab it. Got some water too. No judge. I will not judge. If you want to have a different kind of beverage for this conversation, we're going to talk about the state of the world, the state of the coaching industry, and we're going to talk about politics a little bit because it's real and might as well talk about it. So I'm going to give a little bit of a high-level overview. First of all, I appreciate you all showing up. If you are on this call live or watching the recording, consuming it in any way, I honor you and acknowledge you for being willing to show up, and especially show up to anything that requires, growth, introspection, confrontation, any of the more challenging stuff, because that's how human growth and evolution and mastery always works. So for those of you that are committed to it, I honor you. Wherever you are, engage as much as you can. We've got this simulcasting currently on 4 different platforms. So wherever you are on this platform, especially if you're going live, engage, ask questions, give your comments. I'm not going to be spending a whole lot of time watching the comments come in. So if you do comments on something and I don't address it, it's more likely that I didn't see it. But definitely ask, especially if you have a legitimate comment about my ideas on certain things or strategy or whatever. Put a Q and a colon next to it so we can see that it's a comment. And if I don't address it here, then I will address it at some point in time somehow. So let's talk about this call. What are we going to do? What's my intention here? So this is a state of the coaching industry part 2. We did state of the coaching industry part 1, and that was all on strategy, marketing, sales, what to do in the entrepreneurial world of building a business. This is part 2, and this is really about skill set. How do you increase your value as a coach? The context of this session is going to be transformational coaching. But if you're not a coach or don't want to be a coach, all these concepts are going to apply to anything in anywhere humans are, because this is really about leadership and understanding human behavior. And, for those of you that want to be influential in human behavior in any kind, you want to be a speaker, author, seminar leader, coach, whatever, or you just want to lead people in your family, in your business, in your corporate job, whatever. These elements apply. So I'm going to be sharing a lot of what I've learned over the last 20 years of personal development, but try to make it as relevant as possible in today's world. So many of you came to this call with an invitation of the state of the coaching industry, and you want to know about that. Some of you came to this call with the invitation of life coaching in a Trump world, and you want to know about that. And I'm going to put it all under the same umbrella here. I'm not going to use a bunch of slides in my commentary. I'm not going to use any slides in my commentary about the coaching industry. I'll have some slides when we talk about some programs that we have later on, but I'm intentionally just I'm just going to kind of meander a little bit through a lot of these thoughts. I've got an outline and some thoughts that I want to cover, but I don't know that I'll stick to them. I don't know how long this is going to go. Because we're talking about big stuff. And of course, if you can't make it to the whole thing, you stick around the whole thing, obviously, handle whatever you got to handle and come back and watch it when you can. I suggest you watch this multiple times, because there's probably going to be things that you catch at a different level if you watch it or listen to it a second time. But here's my overall frame. My overall frame here is one of leadership intentionality. We'll call it that. I'm going to talk about what I think we need to understand about human behavior, human society. Obviously, I only have access to my opinions and my perspective, so I'm going to give you everything as I see the world in under the umbrella of personal development and specifically coaching. So if you want to be in that world and apply this to yourself, or you want to help other people, then I think everything that I'm going to talk about will apply. And I'm going to first really keep it general in terms of what I think the world is doing or what's happening in the world today, because I think you need to understand human society if you're going to try to help human beings, or if you're going to obviously navigate that society. So I'm gonna be pretty general in the beginning here, and then I'm going to get more specific about like how to regulate yourself and what I think you need to do from a leadership perspective. I'm going to talk about communication. So I'm going to get more detailed towards the back half of this, but but we got to talk about the general stuff in the first half. And I'm going to offer solutions that I see fit. We got programs that I'll talk a little bit about. But even if you don't choose to join any programs, I'm going to offer solutions in terms of what I think you need to do in whatever it is that you want to commit to, right? So this is going to apply to yourself as a person navigating the world. It's going to apply to yourself as an entrepreneur if you want to be influential and help other people navigate their world, right? So we'll probably have a few beverage pauses, this being one of them. So drink it if you got it. My intention is not to inflame some of the things I'm going to talk about are controversial topics. And I think as leaders, we need to lean into controversy, because running away from controversy won't ever solve anything. And I think most of us have been taught on some level, either explicitly or implicitly, you don't talk about religion, you don't talk about politics, you don't talk about money. But if we don't talk about it, then we'll never learn to talk about it. If we don't learn to talk about it, then these issues that will be polarizing will never be controllable by us, because we're not taught how to talk about these things. So I think it's an obligation of us, for us, if you want to be influential, I think it's an obligation to lean into controversy if it's real. I don't think it's an obligation to create controversy or inflame controversy if it's just, for vanity reasons or financial reasons or whatever. But hey, if that's what you want to do, that's also, it's your choice. But I just want you to understand what my intentionality is behind all of this. And the reason we decided to not just do this conversation, but also put it in a political lens and use Donald Trump specifically in the promotion of this is because he's polarizing. And I'm going to talk about him directly from different angles. I'm not going to, I will do my best. I'm not going to do my best. I'm positive. I will not devolve into just a one-sided political rant. So if that's what you came for, you're going to be disappointed. But I also won't run away from some of the things that I think are objectively real in our world, so that we can look at them, talk about them, and then talk about how do we, how do we respond, right? Where do we go from here? Okay, so this is the world we live in. What do we do? And a lot of that is going to come with the conditional if, meaning it depends on what you want to do. Like, how do you want to, where do you want to play in this game, right? So the reason we are doing this is, as a company, we're constantly talking about coaching and obviously the world that we live in, but how can we coach people? How can we lead people? How can we help people? How can we heal people in a traumatized world? And I've been in the life coaching world and personal development world for about 20 years now. Michelle's been in the space for a long, long time. Sarah's been in the space for a long, long time. We have coaches that are part of our company and in our community. And so we've, got hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years of experience. And we're constantly looking through the lens of helping people. So here's the situation that we have. How do we help? And the world is just different than it used to be, and that's never going to not be the case. That we're always going to evolve. But if you are a coach, and I think a lot of these concepts apply to anybody that wants to be an entrepreneur in the helping world at all. If you are a coach, you want to help people, the world's not the same. So you can't do the same things that used to work because the people are not the same. The programs are not the same. The platforms are not the same. The rules are not the same. The algorithms are not the same, right? So when everything changes inside the playground, you have to change. Otherwise, you'll just be following rules and concepts that are obsolete. So that's where we're coming from. And if there's anything that I say that feels like it's not coming from that place, call me out on it. Like, I don't have any problem with any of you, calling me out on something that seems hypocritical, or you just want to challenge me on whatever. So I welcome all of that as long as it's good faith, right? And I appreciate good faith discussions. I think that's how we find commonality. That's how we address controversy. It's how we become better as individuals, as units, in a relationship or a group of people or whatever. So that's where all of this is coming from. We're talking about human behavior at a high level. We're talking about the identities that we have, the desires that we have. And I think in this like really polarized world that we live in, one of the things that I believe is causing a gigantic problem is this binary worldview where we seek to put everything into an either or category, right? It's either this or it's that. It's either right or it's wrong. It's either good or it's bad. It's either Republican or it's Democrat. And that doesn't work with a society of 8 billion humans. Like, you just can't reduce everything into either or. But our minds will always want the either or. And so I think this world is more dangerous than it's ever been. I think the perception, I don't think the world is objectively more dangerous. And there's so much nuance here. So I definitely don't want to be dismissive or demeaning to anybody. Because I do think there are people that are in danger that weren't in danger, 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 5 years ago, whatever. So I don't mean to be demeaning towards certain people. Where I'm going with this is objectively the safety of the world, especially through like a crime perspective, we're actually in a safer world, but the perception of the world is more dangerous. And, perception is reality most of the time, right? So if we perceive the world to be more dangerous, then we're going to act on those perceptions. And the perception of what's real and what's objectively real is very, very difficult to tell nowadays. And so I think when we have this polarization and this binary worldview and this reductionary mindset, where we're trying to reduce everything to a label, to this or that scenario, then everything becomes problematic, right? So from that perspective, how do we help humans? How do we help humans that are caught up in this reductive society? How do we help them with their goals and dreams and healing traumas and all that stuff? So I've been doing this work for a long, long time. We're committed to try to heal people, try to help people, and we are seeing all kinds of changes in the personal development world, in the coaching world specifically, and I think the world that we live in right now is so much more untethered. It's so much more untethered to an objective truth. It's untethered to reality. I think our whole society is more untethered to reality than ever before. And we as people, I think we as individuals are more untethered to ourselves than ever before. So one of the things that is like a through line of all of these conversations that I get into is being grounded. When the world is disorienting, when we are disoriented individually, what we seek is grounding. And that becomes really difficult I had this vision the other day where like the waves in the ocean are so big now. If you've ever been in the ocean and a wave comes along, you could be standing on the ground. If the wave's big enough, the buoyancy in your body will pull you up off the ground so that you can manage the wave. And then once the wave passes you, then you'll go back down to the ground, right? And I've been in this industry for a long time that, once upon a time there were no waves, right? When social media wasn't profitized, we didn't have all the vitriol that we have now. We didn't have the fighting. We didn't have the politics. We didn't have all that stuff, at least not at the level that it is now, because none of that was profitized, right? Once polarization becomes profitable, then, all the social media companies, all the media companies, they seek profits, not unity, right? So when polarization became profitable, that's when I started to see a lot of different, a lot of changes on social media. And to use that analogy, we got like, the waves of social media and the waves of profits, and, COVID happened. So everybody goes online, and the waves of all of the distractions and the polarization, disorientation, all that has pulled society off the ground, but the waves are still coming. So like, we don't have a chance. The waves never dive down enough for most of us to re-find our footing. And when we don't have footing, we don't have stability. When we don't have stability, we can't pivot. When we don't have stability, we can't have a stable lens to look through. When we're disoriented, we can't discern the way that we would otherwise discern if we had our foot, if our feet were on the ground. So that's the concept here, is that we need footing. We need grounding. We need to be tethered to something. And then we can manage the waves, whether we're talking about waves of information or waves of energy or whatever, we can manage that. But if we don't have footing, then the current is just going to take us wherever it wants to take us. And I think that's a situation that a lot of us are in. We're plugged into the currency of societal communication, the currency of social media, the currency of politics, the currency of division, the currency of, whatever it is. And it's directing us wherever it wants us to go based on what it can profitize from us, right? So that will never cause us to be grounded unless we intentionally pull away from those influences and find our footing. But it has to be an intentional choice that we make. Otherwise, they're not going to do it for us, right? So let me get a little bit more granular in this and speak directly into what I think we're dealing with in this world. And, for the sake of this discussion, I'm calling it a Trump world. And I'm not saying Trump's at fault. This might be a good time to drink whatever you got. I'll take another sip of coffee here. So I'm calling this a Trump world because he dominates the airwaves. That's why. And we live in a hyper-polarized society, a hyper-pressurized society, a hyper-profitized society, hyper-politicized society. And Trump's not the reason for any of that. He's just involved in all of that, right? Because, this is my take. Trump is a marketer at the core, and he's been a marketer for 50 years. So I think he has become the most influential politician because he was a marketer first that then applied his marketing know-how to politics. And most politicians are not marketers first. They are politicians, and then they have to learn how to market. Same thing can be said in the coaching world. Most coaches are not marketers or business people. They have to learn marketing and business and sales from inside the coaching umbrella, inside the personal development umbrella. So when you do have people that are hardcore marketers, that choose coaching as their playground, they generally do better, at least from a financial standpoint, because they bring the business acumen, and a lot of times it's 10, 20, 30 years of business acumen into the coaching world. I think Trump has brought his marketing acumen into the political world. And then all of a sudden, everybody's wigs getting blown back by the effect of that, right? And one of the outcomes of all of this polarization, profitization, all the things that I said, is that we've become more and more hyperbolic as a society, meaning hyperbole. We have become so much more universal, right? Because it's like drugs, right? If you're on drugs, you use a drug over and over and over and over again, you start to lose your sensitivity to that very same drug. And so you have to either consume more of that drug or move on to stronger drugs, right? It's that sensitivity, whatever the word is. I'm losing the word for it, but you build up, like a sensitivity to it. And I think that's happening with our attention. And so we need more and more hyperbole to get our attention, because we live in a world that's so distracting, and anything that's not at a level 8, 9, or 10 of like dopamine excitement, we're just not interested anymore. 10 years ago, it wasn't that way. 10 years ago, we were excited at lower levels, but now like all of our immunity is just getting higher and higher and higher. Our sensitivity is going down, and so we need more and more and more of that charge. Now the problem is, as human beings, we're not individually or collectively built to run on high levels of adrenaline or emotions for any long period of time. It's like a car. You put a car in, you rev the car enough, you'll blow the engine. And I think that's what a lot of us are experiencing. We're experiencing blown engines internally, emotionally. We're experiencing exhaustion. Michelle talks to a lot of the people on our consultations. And let me pause here and plug that. If any of you have anything that you want to talk about individually, you can go to coachseansmith.com/consult and answer a few questions, and we'll get on the phone with you if it's a good fit to see if we can help you. I think the need for coaching and support and therapy and counseling and any form of that kind of support is higher than ever. But I also think it's harder than ever to sell it, to offer it. And also, I think it's harder than ever for people to choose it, because there's so much confusion, right? But the need is growing because of all the things that I'm talking about. Because I think we like an analogy that just keeps coming to me is like when the water gets poisoned, all the fish get sick. So it doesn't matter how much necessarily we are paying attention to the news or having political fights or whatever. If we're in the water, we are going to be affected by the effects of the water because we're in the water. And so even if you're not in the political conversations, you're affected by the political effect on society, because people don't trust as much and people are on edge a little bit more, and people have not only their shields out but their swords out or their guns out ready to fire away immediately, right? So we're at each other's throats, and that's one of the reasons why I think society is energetically more dangerous than it ever has been, especially to sensitive people. So if you feel more scared than you have in the past, I want you to know you're not alone. And a lot of people are now, removing themselves from social media or other, places of danger because they just don't like the fights, right? And that's totally fine if you want to remove yourself from it. I had this thought, I don't know, several years ago, and I just think about it so often now. My dad would despise the world today. He died 14 years ago. He wouldn't be able to handle it. The kindness in his heart would not be able to handle the cruelty in our society. So like, I don't know. There's a part of me that feels a level of peace knowing, yeah, knowing that he didn't have to be affected by some of this stuff. Uh, and so I know there's a lot of you that are in that same boat. That just sometimes we kind of joke about it, like, can you stop the ride? I want to get off. I know a lot of people want to get off the ride. We want to go back to um, life as it was, whatever that means to each and every one of us. But that's not possible, in my opinion, if you still want to engage in society, and if we live in a polarized, profitized, capitalistic, uh, monetized society. So, so it's really deep. I mentioned Michelle and the consultations because she's talking to people all the time, and as am I, as is Sarah, as are a lot of you. And so often, people will just immediately, as soon as the question comes, "How you doing?" It's like just burst into tears. So a lot of people are holding a lot, and not everybody's in this world, right? I know I've got some privilege in a lot of areas of my life, but in one of the areas is that I live in this world nonstop. I'm in the personal development ocean nonstop. This is how I've been making my living for 20 years. And a lot of people are not in this world nonstop because you've got a job somewhere else, or you've got a family situation that isn't conducive to open dialogue, or maybe you guys have conflicts that are really difficult to manage. And so I try myself, I try to be aware and try to remind myself that, for a lot of people, the level of suppression is so high because it has to be. Whereas, I'm in communities where, I got 1,000 people that I can just talk to at any point in time about coaching, about therapy, about like deep, healing. We could geek out about that stuff at the drop of a hat at any point. And I think it's really important that we express rather than suppress. But I also know that not everybody, and probably most people, are not in a situation where they can express all the time. And if you are a coach, you just need to know that the majority of the people are in that boat. I think, at least, the majority of the people are in that boat. So again, what are the fish in the water dealing with? What are the humans in the ocean of society dealing with, right? So going back to Trump, I did a speaker training course back in 2014 or 2015. And I used one of Trump's early political speeches as a model for talking with certainty. And at the time, he was talking about uh, different things than the details weren't the same as what he talks about now, but he had that same delivery of certainty. Like, I know what I'm talking about, and that kind of certainty is intoxicating, especially when we are disoriented, right? To go back to that ocean analogy, if you don't have footing and you don't know where the floor is, especially in water that you can't see through, if you don't know how deep the water is and you can't find your footing, then you're likely to buy any form of a lifesaver that anybody offers you, right? Because the alternative is scary and potentially dangerous. And so when we are disoriented as a society, or we are disoriented individually, what we seek is certainty. We seek stability in the form of certainty most of the time. And Trump has that. And he's always had that, from everything that I've seen. And other politicians have that. So I'm not using Trump as like the profile of evil or anything like that. I'm just using him as an example of some of the things that society is dealing with. And there are people in the personal development industry that have that exact same certainty, and aren't actually helping people. but they speak with certainty. And so in a disoriented world, certainty often wins. It doesn't matter if there's competence behind the certainty. A lot of times what matters is there certainty on the front end. I told you I was going to meander. So here's what I think is important for those of you that want to be a coach. When you commit to competency, when you commit to getting really good, you will first go through incompetence because you're learning something that you're not good at, right? You first pick up a guitar, you first sit down at the piano, you first try to coach somebody, you first pick up a microphone and try to speak publicly. You first start to sing. When you first start to do something that's going to require a lot of effort and commitment, you're going to suck at first because you're just starting. And we don't like that feeling of not being good. But then if we commit to it, we're going to, continually be learning certain things or whatever. But we're always going to be in some state of uncertainty because there's always going to be something else to learn, right? So we're never going to check all those boxes. And the reason I think that's really important to understand is when you have that level of uncertainty in your process, that's going to cause a lot of you to then think you don't have the credibility to speak because you don't feel certain. And if you don't feel certain, then you won't speak with confidence. And therefore, a lot of us that are doing the work are not wrapping it up in certainty from a messaging perspective because we actually don't feel certainty from a processing perspective. And I think that most of us believe that if somebody is confident, then they're certain. And the only reason that they would be certain is if they know what they're talking about. And so most of us, I think, conflate certainty and confidence on the front end for competence on the back end. Because when we don't feel competent, we don't show up with certainty and confidence, right? So we think if somebody does have that, well, then they must be competent on the back end. And I think it's as likely that somebody that shows up with strong certainty and confidence is incompetent than competent. I think it's as likely that somebody that has that facade perspective is actually overcompensating for incompetence. Not all the time, not putting everybody in that boat, but I think it's at least as likely that it's masking incompetence than it is representing competence. But that's really difficult for us to know, right? It's really difficult for us to weed through all that stuff. So going back to Trump and politics, I think disorientation is part of the plan. Disorientation of the populace is part of the plan. It's how politicians keep their power to a large degree. Trump being one of them, but he's not the only one. It happens on the other side of the aisle too. So I think the political conversations that we're being pulled into now are the result of us being disoriented to such a degree that it's like, all right, well, I mean, it's just time to surrender. We just got to surrender to this or that because I don't know what way's up. I don't know what way's down. I don't know what's right. I don't know what's wrong. I don't know what's real. I don't know what's fake. So let me just pick a side. Or let me just disengage completely, right? And I think the other thing that's really important for us to understand is that human beings primarily are the same. We are much more alike than different. But the difference is in the details and the definitions. So, I personally think Trump is the most polarizing political figure we've ever had, possibly the most polarizing human being that's ever been on the face of the planet, because of social media and because of, the amount of attention that he has, and he causes people, to either, like, Trump is not, I don't think there's very many people that are on the fence about Donald Trump, right? But people are either polarized one way or the other. I think there are still some people that don't care enough or don't know enough to be on one side or the other. But he's a polarizing figure, and polarization is, again, profitable, right? So the more that people react emotionally one side or the other to whatever message you're putting out, the more the other people will react also. So from a coaching standpoint, when you market what you fully believe and you speak truth and you speak honesty and you have some passion behind it, there are going to be a lot of people that disagree with you and they'll let you know, but there's also going to be a lot of people that need to hear what you have to say, right? So you're going to increase the polarization on both sides. And in marketing, one of the things that I think is really important is you can't do anything from a leadership standpoint, sales perspective, business. You can't do anything with people that are on the fence. So your job is to speak so powerfully and so consistently that you don't have anybody that doesn't know whether they love you or hate you anymore. You want to get people into one of those two sides, but you can only do it by giving them enough to decide. And the same exact things that you say will cause some people to love you and some people to hate you. And that's fine, because that you just have to be known, right? And so I think Trump is, I actually think Trump is like a human algorithm. I don't think he cares at all what people think about him, especially negatively, but he tries things and he does what works. And that's an extremely powerful skill from a business standpoint. That's why I say he's like a human algorithm, say this, say this, say this, say this, say this, what worked, what didn't work, and then just pivot, right? And to a large degree, that's iteration. Trump is like an iterating algorithm, in my opinion. Regardless of the political conversations and the political views, I'm just talking about like his influence, as neutral as possible. And so he is a polarizing figure. And I think one of the things that's important for us to understand is the reasons that people hate him are the same exact reasons that people love him. I heard it explained the other day with a guy that was a Trump supporter, and he's like, "You guys that hate him because he's going in and breaking the government, that's what we voted for. Like, we voted for him to go in and break the government." Now, whether you believe that what he's doing is right or wrong, that's another conversation. That's not my intention with this particular conversation. But my point is, the same thing that causes people to hate from this angle causes people to love from that angle. And people on both sides of the aisle are looking for the exact same things. They're looking for safety. They're looking for belonging. They're looking for truth. They're looking for freedom. They're looking for patriotism, right? But the definitions for all of those are different. And so people can be arguing, both sides can be arguing over freedom, but they're defining it different. That's why we're not going to get anywhere. That's why this polarization is so exhausting, because we're arguing for the same things, but defining them differently. And that's why in the social media world, like the next time that anybody changes their political views on social media, I think will be the first time ever, because for all the reasons that I'm talking about. I had a conversation a post on social media the other day, and here was the conversation. Something, 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 whatever it was, I don't remember what it was. Something, something, something. It, like, there was some kind of assertion, whatever. And then somebody said, "Where's your evidence?" And then as soon as evidence was asked for, the person that made the first comment attacked them personally. It's like, that's where we're at. Now the personal attacks are so fast. And it usually just comes from any level of challenging. If you challenge anybody, immediately there's an attack. That's why I say, like, people have their swords and their shields out, like ready to go, ready to attack. I'm going to get into this, actually. I used a word that I think is really important, assertion. I'm going to get into that a little bit later when it comes to leadership and communication. I think is really important. All right, so let me get a few more of my political comments out of the way here, and then we'll just use it as a kind of an umbrella for the rest of it. Just to kind of extend that last note, I think we're all essentially looking for the same thing, and as human beings, I think there's like one human mad lib of a human experience, right? We all have traumas, we all have fears, we all have desires, we all have goals, we all have, addictions, we all have patterns, we all have so much of the exact same human story, but the difference is in the details, right? Differences in the definitions. And I think the way to find connection is not through the details, but at the roots, meaning, going into the depth of humanity. Uh, we kind of jokingly came up with something in a group about a year and a half ago or 2 years ago. Because I've always thought, there's a word called namaste, right? And it says I think it's the light in me sees the light in you. And I think in these contexts, in this conversation, I think the way to find connection with humans is through vulnerability. Like, I want to feel your pain. Because if I can feel your pain, then I can probably resonate with it to some degree. And if I can resonate with it, then I'll probably be compassionate as a byproduct of that. But if I can't see your vulnerability, if I can't see myself in you, if we're just too different in the way that I'm seeing you, then to find compassion for somebody that I don't resonate with is virtually impossible, right? So we're having this conversation, and I've said for a long time, like, I want to find a different word that it's like the pain in me sees the pain in you, the human in me sees the human in you. And then we jokingly came up with a word that actually has kind of landed. And instead of namaste, it's namashit. So the shit in me sees the shit in you. The vulnerability in me sees the vulnerability in you. The pain in me sees the pain in you. The human in me sees the human in you. But that's not profitable. So it's an individual thing that we need to commit to if we want to, right? But let me talk directly about politics just for a few minutes. If you want to understand politics, I don't think you can do it by studying politics. I think you can do it only by studying psychology, because politics is full of politicians, which are humans in the political context. So if you understand human psychology, then it'll be easier to understand the human behavior inside the context of politics. But if all you do is stay inside of politics, I don't think it's possible to really zoom out and see the whole thing, right? Especially if you have aligned yourself with one side or the other. If your identity is connected, attached to one side or the other, it's going to be almost impossible to see the neutrality, to pull out and be able to see what could otherwise be seen, right? But if you are interested in political debates and policy, and you are fascinated to some degree by why some people love this and hate that for this, the same thing, but they love it or hate it, the same thing, but they define it from different angles. If you are interested in that, my suggestion, just based on what I've done over the last 6 years or so, is, again, get yourself out of politics, but study the essence of the distinction between the progressive mind and the conservative mind. And I didn't touch my head like the progressive mind is on the right side or the left side. That wasn't intentional. It's just like different sides, right? Like there's a progressive mindset and there's a conservative mindset. And that's a much deeper seed than just the political differences up at the top. But the nature of conservatism and the nature of progressivism can really explain the distinctions. And I actually saw a study that said the conservative mind and the progressive mind are neurologically different. Now, they don't know if that's nature or nurture, right? I happen to believe almost all human behavior is nurture. So I don't think we're born a certain way. I think we learn certain things based on our circumstances and influences and so forth. But that's one of the reasons why two different people, somebody with a conservative view based on all their valid experiences and somebody with a progressive view based on all their valid experiences, will literally see the exact same thing totally different. And there's so much to explore there if you're interested. I'm not going to, that's not the point of this particular discussion, so I'm not going to go deeper into that. But it has helped me understand that from everybody's perspective, like nobody thinks they're the bad guy. We all want to be the good guy. We all want to be right. We all want to be smart. We all want to be on the side of good. We all want to be doing the right thing. So everybody's perspective is valid according to their programming. Now, if you don't agree with the programming, that's a whole nother discussion. But from that person's perspective, nobody thinks they're on the wrong side. Everybody thinks they're on the right side. And it can be frustrating if you believe there is a right or wrong and it doesn't depend on perspective. But if you understand perspective, the exact same thing that you think is 100% wrong looks 100% right from somebody else's perspective, right? So if you really want to dive deep into the neurology of this, that's my suggestion. Don't, in America, don't try to understand Republicans and Democrats, because you're just not going to go anywhere. But if you dive deep, then you can go, okay, I get it. I don't understand. I don't agree with it, but I get it. And I think that's a really powerful place to be. I don't agree, but I get. I don't agree with your assessment. I don't agree with your conclusion, but I understand how you got to it. And if we could agree, if we could understand but not agree, it's one of the ways that we can find footing. It's one of the ways that we individually can find stability. Because when we just can't understand at all, that's when we lose our tethering. That's when we get pulled, our feet get pulled up off the ground, and now we don't have any stability to discern. We don't have stability to maneuver, to navigate. And that's an emotional attachment that I think pulls a lot of us off of the ground. But when we can pull back, now this is assuming that you want to do this stuff. None of you have to do this if you don't want to. But if you really want to find footing, you've got to pull back. And so to be able to study human behavior to the point where you cannot agree but understand is a very stable place to come from. And I think it makes you more influential, because now you can understand somebody's worldview. Like in the coaching world, one of the very first step to transformational coaching, we have a 6-step framework. The very first step is to identify with the other person's model of the world. And you just do it with curiosity. You don't do it with defense. You don't try to jump in and change anything. You just do as best you can to identify with their model of the world. And when you do that, again, you can identify with but not agree. You can basically like try to put on their lenses and go, I get it. With your definitions, with your experiences, with your programming, with your beliefs, with your right and wrong decisions that you've made, with your surroundings, with your programming, I get it. I have all of those things, and that's why I don't come to the same conclusion. But you personally, individually, you will have more stability in your reactions and your creations when your feet are on the ground. And I think that's what the world needs from a leadership standpoint. but it requires you to study the depth of human behavior, and that's going to take a while. And it's going to cause you to, to confront your own human behavior, your own patterns and programs and identities and decisions and all that stuff. But if you want to be an influential leader, I think it's the only choice, right? Because you've got to understand as much as you possibly can, and you can't understand anything without exploring it, and you'll never explore anything you're not curious about. So if you don't show up with curiosity, you'll never explore the things that you could otherwise understand, and then you'll just be untethered. And in my definition of what we're talking about from a leadership standpoint, if you're untethered, you're not useful. You could be useful to the side that you identify with, but you're not useful to the grander scheme if you're untethered, if you're not grounded, right? I think the last thing I want to say about politics is that I think we as a society are much less divided left and right. We even have this continuum that we talk about, the far left or the far right. That's a horizontal difference, right? And we have labels and philosophies and all that stuff, and that kind of cements the division that we have between the left and the right. Left being progressive and right being conservative for the most part. But I don't think our divisions as a society are left and right as much as they are top and bottom. The separation between the owners of our society and the owned of our society is insanely big. The separations between the progressive mind and the conservative mind are actually not that big. And the majority of the people are not on the edges of the extremes anyway. So I think 90% of us are more clustered in the middle here. As far as left, right, we're conservative in some areas, we're progressive in other areas, we're all nuanced, right? We're not just a monolith. But top to bottom, the separation is massive. And that's where I think the political divide actually resides, is the top to bottom. And I think if you take a look at the owners in the political world, or the owners in the financial world, the people that have the institutional power. So I just got an image of like a triangle, right? So if you can envision a triangle, those of us that are down here at the populace, there's a lot more difference for us to like be shoved into at the bottom of the triangle. But if the top of the triangle is this distinction that I'm making, and the people that have the institutional power, there's actually a lot less difference left and right where they are up there. These are just my amateur thoughts. But where I think that is helpful is if we actually were to say, let's create a society that was the most fair for the most amount of people, we would have to unite bottom and then take down the top. That's the only way to do it. Right now, we are aligned left or right, and as long as the gangs are fighting, the people who own the gangs are solidifying their power. So it's beneficial for the people at the top to keep us fighting. And they control the strings because they have the institutional power. So if they have the institutional power and they own the media channels, they can keep the population fighting because they know a unified population is much more dangerous to their power. That's where I think the actual division is. And as long as we're fighting with each other and we're making individual people the problem, the separation is never, is never going to get challenged. I remember seeing something. I don't have the numbers right now, but I want to say like 30 years ago or something, I saw a study like the average CEO, and there's nuances to any of this. So, I'm not just taking this whole thing with, a broad stroke, but something like the average CEO salary was like, I don't know, 10 times or 20 times the average employee salary. And now it's like 500 times, something like that. I mean, it's astronomical change. You look at somebody like Jeff Bezos or Musk or these guys, like their salaries compared to the employees are insane. Now, that doesn't mean that they shouldn't have bigger salaries. I get that part. But what I'm saying is the separation in society from the ownership to the employed is staggering. And so there's no benefit really for that to be solved. Or first of all, you have to agree it's a problem, right? And I would venture to say Bezos does not think that his salary is a problem to be solved. So if it's not a problem to be solved, then we can't wait for them to solve it, right? And that brings up another issue. Like, we need to first agree on what the problems are. And without agreement on the problem and an agreement on the solution, then discussion is literally useless. It is a waste of time. So again, I want to get into that a little bit with the details when I talk about communication here in a little bit. So let me just wrap up this first section here. We're going to talk about a program that we've got coming up, and then we'll get back into this conversation. I can't underscore what I think is the biggest problem, which is that polarization is profitable. I cannot underscore that. Because as long as it's profitable, that's what whoever is owning the platforms, that's what they will be committed to, as long as it's profitable. I remember a survey or a study or something. Man, I wish I could find it. I've looked for it a few times and can't find it. But I remember seeing like a collection of, I think, 12 of the most polarizing topics in human society. And it was like abortion, religion, gun rights, those kinds of things, right? Like death penalty. Probably several in the financial world, like Social Security or whatever. And I remember it saying that I don't know if it was social media at the time or just media in general, that media had managed to completely polarize, I think, 3 of those 12 topics. They figured out a way through, this is before the days of like, high level algorithms, stuff like that, but they figured out a way to completely polarize the topics. And then it said, so their goal is to polarize the remaining 9. Because if we can get the humans polarized, the amount of money that makes the media platforms, social media or traditional media, is staggering. So the media has no interest in unifying the people. The media only has interest in profitizing the population. Now, if we as a society came together and go, we're no longer going to feed into this bloodlust that we have. We're no longer going to immediately jump on the dopamine hits of all the shit that's out there that's completely fake, objectively false. We're not going to jump into these conversations. We're not going to comment. We're not going to pass it on. We're not going to help these things go viral. We're not going to share. We're not going to jump in. If we as a society stopped the demand of our bloodlust, then the bloodlust would no longer be profitable and the media algorithms would shift. So the media is not the bad guy. The media is just the supplier. And as soon as the demand changes, the supply will change. Now, I don't know of a way for us to just snap a finger and figure out a way to change the demand at a collective level of society. But we can do it personally. I'm sure a lot of you have seen this or heard about this. Like, you can change your algorithms on your devices. Just stop clicking on certain videos and start clicking on other videos, and the algorithms will realign. And within a short period of time, you'll only see the videos that you want to see. But that's an individual level, and that's why we need to individually choose what we're going to do and how we're going to do it. Because if we don't individually, and if we don't make some of these changes in society, then a gang war only has one end. The one gang has to completely kill the other. That's the only end in a gang war. So as long as we have a prophetized gang war, we have to hate each other. We have to metaphorically or unfortunately literally kill each other, because that's the only end in a gang war. But as long as the gang war is profitable, like I said, the media is not going to change. So we individually have to collectively pull back and go, what I really want to do is not contribute to the gang war. I want to remove myself or try to unite the gangs. Now, trying to unite the gangs is an insanely difficult task. It's possible, but it's just insanely difficult because we're going up against profitization. We're going up against capitalism. We're going up against fundamental institutional separation. We're going up against deep-seated traditions and cemented roots that are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years old, right? So, and we're also dealing with humans, and we're all animals, by the way. So we're all animals, and we want to stay alive, and we want to avoid danger. Like, we all have these animalistic urges. So there's a primal nature to a lot of this that makes it so much more powerful than just our intellect. But my point is, it's all possible, right? It's all possible to do the work that you want to do to make whatever impact you want to make on society. So I'm going to take a little 5 to 7 minute advertising break here, but we are the advertiser. So the little break I want to take here to just talk to you about one of our programs that does all this stuff, right? The reason we're having this conversation is because if you want to have a stable foundation of influence, then you have to deep dive into human behavior. And that's what we've been teaching for a long time now in one of our programs that's coming up called ECCP. So let me just show a couple slides here for you, a few slides, and then we'll get back into the discussion. We're going to talk a lot more about regulating your nervous system, how to sell coaching in today's world, how to be a transformational leader. I'm going to talk about some communication stuff that is, I think, really, really helpful, really healthy, really beneficial. Lori, I do see your comment. I'd love for you to follow up with that if you don't mind. I'm not sure I agree with your perspective on media. If you're willing to go ahead and share that, if you don't mind, and I may or may not dive back into it, but I'm always interested in what you have to say, especially somebody like you. So here we go. You should see my slides now, yeah? So if you want to deep dive into human behavior and human development, it's possible, but it's a big conversation. And we put it in 4 different stages of mastery and evolution. And the first stage is the early stage of introductory information. The second stage is immersive implementation. The third stage is isolated iteration. The fourth stage is independent iteration. I'm not going to teach all this stuff. I just taught it yesterday. It took 30 minutes to teach all of it. So that's not the point of this. If you do want to see that, we have it in our transformational skill set training series. So you can go to coachshansmith.com/transformation-series, I think. Michelle, if you don't mind putting that link somewhere, I forget the exact URL. And you can listen to the replays of all the things that we're doing here. So there's 4 different stages, and immersion is the one that's most important for most people to really go deep. And most people never get to immersion because everything is just kept shallow, right? So this is a visual of what we're talking about when it comes to human behavior, right? We've got this little profile of the head, an external event. We see something, we hear something, we read something, an external event makes it into us, but then our brains, because of the way it's wired and all the things that are going on in the human pinball machine that's inside our skulls, will run it through all of these filters: your language, your memories, your decisions, your metaprograms, your values, your beliefs, your perceptions, your drivers, your neurological experiences, your embodied memories. All of those things will filter the event. And then your brain will either delete things or distort things or generalize things, and then it'll run it through your representational systems. It'll run it through your current state. It'll run it through whether you feel healthy right now or not. It'll run it through whether you're tired or not. It'll run it through your current physiology, your body language, what's going on in the world, whether you feel traumatized or not, whether you feel grounded or not. It'll run it through all of these things at lightning speed. And then it will influence a behavior. See, most of us think something happens, we see it, and then we respond to it. We don't understand the depth of filtering that our brains are doing. So I share this because if you really want to deep dive into human psychology, it's possible, but it's not easy. It's not like, let me just take a weekend course and then I'm going to learn everything. When somebody does this, then I'm going to do that. Or when I feel triggered, then this is how I control my behavior. If you don't understand all the elements inside the pinball machine, then you really won't be able to control it. And this takes a while, but it takes immersion. It takes mastery training. You're not going to get this just simply by listening to some podcasts. You're not going to get it just by reading a few things. You're not going to get it just by exploring a few, exercises or a few patterns in your life. You're just not going to do, because it's too deep, right? Don't do yourself the disservice of shallowizing your depth, right? Your value as a person deserves scuba diving, not snorkeling. You are a unique set of circumstances and variables, and so please don't think that you're just going to be able to make a few switches here and there and then be able to control your behavior. That is a deep disservice to your value as a person. If you're willing to dive and learn and explore, then you can start to get some of that control that I'm talking about. But control only comes from understanding. Understanding only comes from exploration. So you have to be willing to explore. The good news, though, is all of these things on this in this profile head, they're all simple. Each one of these things is actually quite simple. It's just that you're dealing with a lot of simple variables at the same time. So this is complex. These things are moving all around, but each one of them is simple. And if you can capture each one of them and study the simplicity of it and go, okay, now I understand what metaprograms is. Now hit me with language. All right. Now I understand what language is. Okay, now hit me with memories. Okay, got it. Now hit me with embodiment. Okay, got it. You can study these things, the individual simplicity of all of them, and then start to get a handle on them and eventually have control over the majority of them. And that's the only way, in my opinion, to stabilize yourself, especially in a disorienting world. And it's the only way to have any kind of leadership influence on other people. You just have to know this stuff, right? So I will never tell you that transformation is easy. You can go to Udemy and buy some fake stuff. This is my judgmental side is going to come out. I'm not saying it's not valuable, but nobody's going to change their life. Nobody's going to transfer their life, with a $9 course, right? And that's just, check the box. Let me run through these things. I'm not saying those courses are not valuable. I'm not saying they can't be like a part of the process. Yes, but they're not sufficient on their own because the human brain is way too deep to be able to just take anything easy and shallow and be able to manage anything, right? Your snorkel gear can only allow you to see so far. You just can't get to the depths of the ocean with snorkel gear, right? So I want to do everything I can to let you know that this is all possible, it's all doable, but it's also not quick and easy. If you think human transformation is quick and easy, then you're going to fall for quick and easy representations of it, and it won't work. So ECCP is our version of immersion for you, for any of you that are interested in this. It's a 5-day deep dive experiential process. The context is coaching, for those of you that want to be coaches or want to deepen your coaching, but the foundational concepts apply to everybody. That's not just, for coaches, because it's deep dive, all the things we're talking about, it's mastery level at all 4 levels. There is a certification from it, but what comes from it internally more so is more of your certainty and conviction rather than just, a certification on the wall. We teach a lot of the coaching tools. There is a huge 185-page manual that you get. It is for those of you that are committed to like long-term, sustainable, foundational leadership. Some of the things that we talk about in here, it's much more of a holistic course. It's not just exercise. It's how to use exercises, right? How to know when to use a certain thing and why to use a certain thing and how to use a certain thing and with who to use a certain thing. And even more important than that, how to discern when not to use a certain thing. So it's really about teaching you how to fish, not serving you a fish dinner, right? It's that same concept. We want to teach you groundedness. We want to teach you self-awareness. We want to teach you alignment. We want to teach you all these things so that you can pivot, make adjustments, and learn how to think, not just regurgitate what to think. And so much of it is just increasing your awareness, increasing your sensory acuity, what you see in other people, what you see in yourself, how to be in the moment, how to make quote unquote aligned decisions in the moment based on everything that you're seeing, how to process in real time, right? How to address anything that a human being might be dealing with, whether it's relationships or traumas or financial issues or beliefs or, just managing their emotions. Like anything and everything that a human being might bring to you is understandable and addressable if you take the time to learn the depth of human behavior, right? And there's external and internal. So we go a lot about, or we go deep into language and how to ask questions from a leadership standpoint, how to create leverage, how to understand whether somebody is ready to go into a process or not, right? And then we give you a lot of these different tools where you can do a Cartesian coordinates exercise, or you can do an anchoring exercise, you can do a timeline exercise and actually help people untie certain knots, right? But this deep dive learning is possible for all of you because you're a human and you're interested in human behavior. So you naturally are interested in some of this stuff. And what it'll do is give you a lot of more like intellectual, but also emotional control in addressing human behavior of all kinds, whether it's internal for yourself, interpersonal or intrapersonal between you and your spouse or you and your friends or family or whatever, and from a leadership standpoint, right? This is what gives you the embodied certainty that people will follow. We currently have a code that we are offering. It's TST35. TST stands for Transformational Skill Set Training, which is this bigger series that we're doing. And 35 is 35% off. So for those of you that want to jump in, you can type that into the website there, coachshansmith.com/ECCP. If you have any questions whatsoever, let us know. You can book a call at coachshansmith.com/consult, or just put a question here in and we'll address it as much as we can. It's a powerful event. Jennifer said she grew more in 5 days than she had in 5 years. And Carnell said it's the absolute representation of the word transformation. That's because that's our intention. Our intention is transformation and understanding transformation. So That's ECCP. We have an 8-month payment plan of only $249. The next course is coming up in April next month, as we're recording this, April 28th through May 2nd. It's a Monday through Friday. It's all online, so you don't have to travel. You don't have to worry about getting accommodations or any of that sort of stuff. You just do all of it online. It's all recorded. Even if you don't, if you're not able to attend all the sessions, you're going to get the replays immediately and be able to follow along. And the tickets are good for 2 years. So even if you can't get here for the end of March, you can get a ticket and then use it later on whenever you want over the next 2 years. We do it roughly around every 6 months. So it's a chance for you to get the take advantage of the discount and use it whenever you are able to. The full price is $19.97, but 35% off will get you much less than that, obviously, in on a full pay. I think it's like $600 off or something like that. So that is our little mini marketing advertisement here for ECCP. But we are the advertisers, at least. You know what would be awesome is when this does hit YouTube, because YouTube takes the lives and puts it. What would be awesome is if, like, somewhere during this there was some other advertisement, especially somebody selling something that I don't agree with. That'd be fun. All right, let's get back to this conversation here. Let's get a little bit more detailed from a coaching standpoint. Like, why does all this matter? Why does it matter that we're talking about politics? We're talking about media. Why does it matter? It matters because society's caught up in it. That's why it matters. It matters because humans are being influenced by all the things that are happening in our society. And the political effect, right? Like, I'm personally not interested in political conversation as much as I'm interested in the political effect on society. I'm interested in coaching. I'm interested in personal development. I'm interested in polarization. I'm interested in the effect of politics. Politics is just one of the polarizing things, though, on social media. The bigger issue is polarization. Politics is a way to get people polarized, but politics is not the only way to polarize. So in the personal development industry, the way that this has taken hold, I think, is that our emotions can be polarized in one direction or the other. And so if we see an advertisement for something, anything, and it's talking to us about something that increases our fear, it can polarize our experience of fear. And if we're polarized in our experience of fear, we're more likely to act. If we're polarized in our dopamine hit, if we're polarized in our excitement, if we're polarized in our primal desires, we're more likely to act. So we're more likely to act from a position of polarization. So in the personal development world, what's happening is not so much political divides or religious divides or any of those kinds of things, philosophical divides. It's more about emotional polarization. It's more about, if I get you really afraid of something, that I can sell you the Band-Aid to it. Or if I can get you to buy into something that you really, really want at a deep level, then you're more likely to pay me money. Or if I can get you to pay attention to something that is so mesmerizing to you and so compelling to you, then I can get your eyeballs on this video for 20 minutes and I can sell somebody's advertising to get in front of you, right? So the polarization of the human experience is much deeper than just politics. And it's that emotional connection that that turns into dollars for the platforms. So the polarization provides more attention, and more attention is what makes money. That's the essence of all of this. And so the algorithms nowadays, they only care about attention. So if polarization leads to attention, then the algorithms are going to try to polarize, because the whole point is to get more attention so that they can sell the attention, right? We really live in an attention economy more than ever before, right? It's even more important than, or it's more influential, I think, than information. It's attention, because if somebody doesn't have attention, then it doesn't matter what the information is, right? So if you understand the depths of some of this stuff, you understand the systems that are at play, then you can decide how and where you want to pull yourself out of it, and just in terms of your own regulation, or how you want to play inside of it. Like if you want to be a leader, if you want to be a coach, if you want to be um, some kind of unifying figure or whatever, that's your choice. But you have to understand the systems that are at play. So for instance, if you want to help people change their self-esteem, please don't follow the Grant Cardone influencer model, because that's not what he's selling. He's selling money. He's selling private jets. He's selling, this, what I would say is this like masculine version of success, which is fine if that's what you're selling. But don't follow the Grant Cardone template for self-esteem, because that's not what's on the table there, right? So what you got to do is just make sure that you're following rules that will help you succeed, not put your different ingredient into somebody else's recipe when their ingredients and your ingredient is not the same. You're not the same, your product's not the same, your seeker's not the same, your market's not the same, your pricing isn't the same, your language isn't the same, your come from's not the same, but you want to follow the same recipe. It's just it's wildly misaligned for most people. So that's where all of this matters. Because if we live in this hyper-polarized, hyper-pressurized, hyper-prophetized, hyper-politicized world, and that's how all the rules are set, then you cannot follow those rules and win unless you want to feed into that model. So you have to figure out what rules are going to win for you. And that requires just a whole different set of iterations. It just requires a different mindset, it requires different training, it just requires different things. And I think that if I was going to boil it down to like why most people struggle in the entrepreneurial world, especially in the coaching and personal development world, it's because there's a concept out there that there is a right thing to do. And so then people are just continuing to plug themselves into the right thing. In reality, you are the right thing. You are the most valuable ingredient. And what you need to first do is increase your skill set to a point where you become very, very valuable to other human beings when they pay attention to you. And when you increase your value to other human beings through competency in your skill set, then when you do get their attention, they will pay attention more. And then they'll lean in more, and then they'll consume more. And then you have somebody who is a bystander at first and a window shopper then, and then a little bit more intrigued. And then maybe they come into the shop, so to speak, right? Metaphorically. And then they become a prospect. But that takes a while to convert people into that, usually, if you're doing it with competency rather than hyperbole, right? It's really easy to get somebody's attention with hyperbole. Lose 10 pounds by eating more cake and canceling your gym membership. I'm interested, right? That kind of hyperbole is so disruptive to the brain that we're almost neurologically incapable of ignoring it. We're almost incapable. I actually don't think we are incapable of ignoring it. I don't think we are capable of ignoring it. We can look at it and then dismiss it because we're wiser to know that that's not possible. But I actually think something like that, it's like our human brain is just susceptible to anything that's like a what? At least from an initial attention grab. That's one of the reasons why so many of especially the paid advertising uses hyperbole, because they know it works. They know it works because the human can't ignore hyperbole like that, especially if it's anywhere in the ballpark of something that they want, right? Lose 10 pounds? Yes, I'm in. Eat more cake? Hell yeah, I'm in. And I'm sure we've all clicked links on things that we knew were fake, but just in case it's real. So we're at a neurological disadvantage to hyperbole. That's one of the reasons why it's used so often, especially in the world, where profits are concerned. But because of all of that, and because this has all been gaining steam over the last several years, especially with COVID, when so many people went online, we don't know who to trust anymore. And we don't trust each other anymore. And we don't trust platforms anymore. And we don't trust concepts anymore, because most of us have been taken advantage of to some degree. We purchased something that ended up being misaligned. We misunderstood it. We had an expectation that was false. We've had some kind of negative experience with choices that we've made in this hyper-polarized, prophetized, pressurized society of ours, right? So we've made choices, and then we stop trusting ourselves in our ability to make right choices. And because of that, the majority of the human society, in my opinion, is more confused and traumatized than ever before. And that's a dangerous combination. We're more confused by all the things that are out there, and we're more traumatized by all the pain that we felt, or the missed expectations, or the embarrassment, or the bad choices, or jumping out on social media and getting attacked, right? Like, we're more traumatized with our emotional experiences, and we're more confused with our intellectual choices. So when the body is traumatized and the mind is confused, that is a prime recipe for disorientation as a human. So what do we need to do? Well, we need to, as best as we possibly can, we need to clean up those two things, but we need to understand that they're different. And so one of the analogies that I've been using for a long time now, because it's just so perfect, is, if you imagine that our life is the main floor that we're living in, we've got two different levels. We've got our intellectual attic, right? You go upstairs to the attic, and there's a lot of things in there. A lot of people use that as storage space or whatever goes on up there. But then we also have a basement. And so the distinction that I just made is so critical to understand. Your body is your basement. Your intellect is your attic. And they're both important. It's just that they're not the same, and neither one of them on its own is sufficient. So what does that mean? That means a lot of us are using our intellect to clean up everything or consume everything that the intellect can do, but it's not changing any of our embodiment, because it can't do that. You cannot clean your basement from the attic, and you cannot clean your attic from the basement. But they both need to be cleaned. And you can address something in the attic, in the intellect of your mind, and not have addressed it at all in the basement of your body. In today's world, because of everything I've been talking about, embodiment work is so much more important than it ever has been, because society is more dangerous and like emotionally dangerous. It's more it's more turbulent than it's ever been. So because there's more turbulence in society, we need rootedness even more than we've ever needed. And that's embodiment work. When I got into embodiment work in 2017, I believe it was the first time that I realized, oh shit, there's a basement down there. I didn't know. I just was up there cleaning my attic. I was doing all the work at an intellectual level. I was making a lot of progress in business. I was making a lot of money. I was climbing up the ladder, but I had emotional conflicts that I didn't even know about. I had shame that I've been carrying around in my body for decades and decades that I wasn't aware of. And when you're not aware of something, it doesn't mean it doesn't operate. It means it operates unchecked. So if you have shame in your body, if you have emotional conflict, if you have belief conflicts, if you want the spotlight but you're afraid of visibility, those embodied conflicts will operate. But if you're up in the attic, sweeping and cleaning and mopping and getting all the cobwebs down, the attic looks great, but you don't know what's going on in the basement, right? Your floors might be flooding. your foundation might be caving in, and at some point in time, it might bring the nice, polished, shiny, clean attic down with it. And you too, if you're up in the attic, right? So I was up there mopping and cleaning and cleaning up the cobwebs, and I didn't realize that deep down below, my body was influencing a lot of things. And the awareness here, I want you to understand the distinction, because nearly everybody goes to the attic because that's where the safety is. We have no emotions in our mind. All we have is thoughts. Our intellect is like a computer. Now, we have thoughts that can create emotions, but the thoughts are not emotions. So I just want you to understand the distinction here. What all of us are trying to avoid are negative feelings. Those are all in the body. Those are all in the basement. The easiest way to not feel emotions in the basement is to go to the attic. So when we go into our intellect, we separate ourselves from accessing the body. Again, that doesn't mean that either one of them is right or wrong, good or bad. They're both necessary. It's just that one doesn't do the work that the other one can only do. Vice versa, right? So most of us, though, are trying to avoid the feelings that we have in our body, so it's safer to go up into our brain. And then we change the channel. It feels like we're no longer feeling something. We think that's a breakthrough or a transformation, but it's not. It just means that you just changed what you were paying attention to. But the thing that you're no longer paying attention to is still there. It's still operating. Now, some of this work could be emotional, but not all of it is. It's not necessarily like painful to go into the body. There is some pain down there, but it's not necessarily painful. And I think one of the reasons a lot of people don't do this work is because it sounds and feels painful, especially if you've tried certain things and touched certain pain, and for whatever reason you weren't able to heal it. You weren't in the right environment. You didn't have the right person leading you or whatever. Then it's like, well, I don't ever want to do that again because I tried that once and it didn't work. So I'd rather get really good at changing the channel if I think I can't stop the channel from broadcasting, right? I'd rather get good at avoiding my feelings if I don't think I can heal them. And that choice makes sense if you don't think you can heal them. But what if you can? What if you can, going back to that profile that I showed you, what if you can learn about the meta programs and the values and the decisions that you've made and the traumas that you've had and the ways that the human brain operates and the belief systems and your value? What if you actually could go down and play with some of these things? Then you can remove some of the conflict. You can untie a lot of the knots. And yeah, some of it's emotional work because you're an emotional animal. You know, if you don't want to be an emotional animal, you shouldn't have chose human in this go around. You should have chose something else. But we are emotional. I think it's one of the things that makes us uniquely human is our emotions. So I'd rather you understand what is at stake here and what's possible, and then do the work that can untether you, or do the work that can root you, or stabilize, or at least allow you to understand certain things. Remember, you cannot control anything you don't understand. You cannot understand anything you don't explore. So if you never explore yourself, you cannot understand yourself, which means you cannot control yourself. You're not able to, right? The most important piece of human behavior is the human behavior underneath the behavior. If you don't understand the human underneath the behavior, you cannot control the behavior, whether it's yourself or anybody else, right? So this is what's at stake. And another analogy that we use in our programs, I think is really helpful, is the analogy of the golden Buddha. I'm going to try to do this quick. I'm not even going to tell the details of the story, but there was an actual golden Buddha found, I don't know how long ago, and it was covered in clay. And when they figured out why it was covered in clay, then they understood what had happened. because the people that had the golden Buddha was a civilization of monks, and they didn't want their Buddha to be taken, so they covered it up in clay. That's as much of the details I want to share. But the reason that that's important is because they covered it up in clay to protect the Buddha. And that's essentially what we do in our life. We are the golden Buddha, but as life is difficult for us, as we experience things that aren't fun, that are embarrassing, that are painful, we cover ourselves up with clay. We put these layers of protection on. And you can put a mile worth of protection on. That doesn't make the golden Buddha go away, but it certainly makes it harder to access the golden Buddha. So this work is really, it's not about you becoming anything that you aren't already. It's about removing the layers of clay to expose who you already are and who you've always been, but once upon a time needed to protect. So it's really about dropping the layers of protection, but you have to do that from the inside. You have to get to the point where you no longer need the protection, right? And all that work is doable, but you're not going to do it, just through your mind. So you have to understand what was at stake. Why did I put on this layer of protection? And then you can do the work that will melt it away, that will chip it away. Sometimes a bunch of clay comes off at once, sometimes just a little bit here and there. But in my opinion, part of the process of this human life, this is for me, you can adopt it if you want, but part of my process for my human life, and I can feel the emotions just coming up as I think about what I'm about to say, is to chip away as much of that clay as I possibly can and see as much of myself as I possibly can. Because I actually think that most people go to their grave never having been introduced to their real self. So this is a reclaiming journey. This is about reintegrating. This is about reconnecting us to ourselves. And when we're addicted to all of these external things, whether we're talking about politics or religion or social media marketing or the algorithms, all that stuff, when we're addicted to plugging into all these things, we're not exploring the golden Buddha. We're not chipping away at the clay. We're actually putting more on, or at the very least, distracting ourselves from doing the work. And then we source our value, our enoughness, our self-esteem, our confidence, our success. We source all that stuff from external measures. And as long as we're sourcing it from external measures, the golden Buddha will never be released. So this work, in an analogy, is removing as many layers of clay as possible to release and expose as much of the golden Buddha as possible. Because you are not the problem. It's your programming that's the problem. Going back to politics, Donald Trump as a person is not the problem. From the other side, AOC as a person is not the problem. Individual people are never the problem of systems. Individual people are products of systems. But it's really easy for us to villainize individual people because we can, like that's how we consume stories. Who's the villain? Who's the good guy? Right? Who's the hero? Right? Who am I rooting for? One or the other. So it's easy for us to humanize and personify the bad guys or the problems, but those are symptoms. And so a big decision that every single one of us needs to make is, are we going to do symptom work, or are we going to do system work? If you're going to do symptom work and you have an apple tree in your backyard and you really wanted an orange tree, symptom work means buy yourself some orange paint and go paint the apples orange and just tell people you have an orange tree. That's symptom work. It's actually really fast. It's very easy. You don't have to do anything. You don't have to bite any of the apples. Just paint right over them. Problem is, still an apple tree. If you want to do system work, you have to uproot the apple tree and plant an orange tree. And that takes way longer because now you got to, you got to do the uprooting, you got to do the planting, you got to do the watering, and there's no guarantee that it's going to grow right away. But however long orange trees take to grow, I don't know, call it 5 years. 5 years from now, you actually have an orange tree. And then you don't have to spend any money on the paint. But 5 years later, if all you're doing is painting the apples orange, you're still going to have an apple tree, and you're going to spend, thousands of dollars and time, hours and energy on a symptom cover up. But that will never change the systems. And that's a fundamental choice you have to make. And I no longer judge people that just want to change symptoms for whatever reason, because they just don't have the time. They're at a stage in their life where they're just not worth, it's not worth the energy or whatever. That's totally fine. But the thing is, you can't follow symptom approaches and expect systemic changes. And you as a person are a system. You're a system of beliefs. You're a collection of experiences. You're a very complex system that's changing literally every single minute of every single day. You are a system. So if you're going to do symptom work, don't expect a system change. And expect you to have to constantly do symptom work. Because eventually the paint's going to wash away and you have to repaint it, which is fine if that's your choice. I just think most people are not aligned in their choice and their expectations. And I think that's, that's where a lot of the self-induced misery comes from. So if you are committed to doing systems work, then you have to study systems. You have to study human systems. You have to study psychological systems. You have to study social systems if that's what you want. You have to study relationship systems if that's what you want. If you want system influence, if you want to be able to influence systems in individuals and or groups of individuals, you need to study systems. Otherwise, don't try, because you don't have the capacity to. You don't have the competency, right, to change somebody's system. You could just keep selling them orange paint, but you're never going to heal a relationship to food, or you're never going to actually shift any sort of traumas or anything like that. So if you are interested in studying systems, then you got to get in the classroom that's teaching systems. The majority of the classrooms out there are symptoms, in my opinion. Highly judgmental opinion, but the majority of the solutions out there are symptom solutions. They're snorkeling solutions, right? The majority of the weight loss industry, I actually saw this in a study years and years and years ago, but I'm sure it's the same. The majority of the money in the weight loss industry is just people moving from one diet that doesn't work to another diet that doesn't work. And at the time, I think it was like 80% of the weight loss industry money was just people spending on things that don't work, and they know it won't work. I think the personal development world and the coaching world is similar. I wouldn't say it's 80%, but a lot of the money that's being made in the coaching industry is being made by vendors selling symptoms to either people that don't know that there's systems work, or they just, for whatever reason, are choosing against systems work. And they're like, I know symptoms don't work, but maybe this one will. And I think one of the things to really understand about you personally, about the decisions that you make, is once you make, let me back up a second. So if you're buying what I'm trying to sell you right now, the concept of systems versus symptoms means there are two pathways. There's a systems pathway and there's a symptoms pathway. And as you look at the fork in the road, the symptoms pathway, it's nice and sunny and smoothly paved. It looks like, it's like all you got to do is just sit on this skateboard or just stand on it, just balance on the skateboard, and it'll just pull you all the way down, because this is just a nice, easy, shiny, warm, pathway. It's like, oh, it's so enticing, it's so compelling, it's mesmerizing. Let me just follow that one. But the the systems work looks like a uphill climb, right? You got no, you don't have any ropes. Like it looks scary. So the majority of the people are gonna choose the symptoms, at least in the beginning. Here's one of the major problems with that. Whichever pathway you choose, you will most likely stay on. Because if you choose the pathway of quick fix or symptom, even if you don't know in the moment that's what you're choosing, but if you choose the pathway of quick fix, the way the human brain works, you have chosen a concept first, that quick fix is available, that it's a real thing. And if you buy the idea that a quick fix is possible, then your brain will try to figure out where your brain will search for the solution inside the concept that a quick fix is possible. So what that means is if you purchase either through your time, your energy, or your money, a solution on that pathway and it doesn't work, you are infinitely more likely to choose another solution on that same pathway. In other words, you're just more likely to choose a different brand of orange paint than to go, you know what, I think I need to uproot my tree. Because you've already made a choice to the idea. You've already purchased the concept. And once you purchase the concept, then you're going to purchase the details on that pathway. Because the human brain hates making the decision that we've been wrong. So in order to go, this pathway is actually probably not the right pathway. Oh God, I got to go to that other pathway. There's an ego destruction that happens for most of us. Because we then have to realize I've been wrong all along. I made 5 wrong choices. I got duped. I'm the dumb one. Like that is just a really, really difficult emotional thing to go through for most people. So it's like, okay, yeah, I probably know this is not the right one, but let me just get just one more brand of orange paint because this one sounds like it's actually got the secrets. So I'm not saying any of this to like be demeaning or in any way be negative. That's the way our brains operate. There's actually a term called sunk cost. The more cost that we have sunk into something, the more likely it is we'll continue on that pathway. So if we've sunk 5 years into a pathway, we're more likely to stay on it. If we've sunk $5,000, $50,000, we're more likely to stay on it. If we've sunk emotional energy, if we've told people that this is the thing, we're much more likely to stay on something that we've already sunk a lot of costs into, a lot of our resources into. So now we're dealing with human psychology. So why is this important? It's important because our decision making is something that we can look at internally, see why we make the decisions, and actually start changing our decisions. But you're not going to do it until you like look at yourself and realize, why do I want that quick fix? What is that I want as a coach or as a leader or from money or from relationships anyway? What am I out for, right? What are my intentions? And if my intention is this, then what's the best course of action that's aligned? That's the piece. That's aligned for you. Not that's the right thing or the wrong thing, but what's aligned for you. In the coaching world, personal development world, a lot of times you make the distinction between dolphins and sharks. The animals, dolphins and sharks, are very, very similar in their body shape and where their terrain is. And they're ocean creatures, obviously. The coloring, like there's so many similarities between dolphins and sharks on the surface. But they are literally different species of animal. A shark is a fish and a dolphin's a mammal. So what sharks and dolphins need are diametrically opposed. Like number one, dolphins need air and sharks do not. So if you are a dolphin and you are in shark school, everything the shark teaches you to do is correct and wrong. It's correct for sharks and wrong for you. Because when the shark teaches you how to swim, your body actually doesn't maneuver the same way a shark's body does. The shape of your tail is different. The orientation of your tail is different. So if you try to swim like a shark as a dolphin, you will die before you learn how to swim. So metaphorically, what a lot of dolphins are doing, and the majority of people are dolphins in this scenario. What a lot of people are doing is going to shark school and wondering why it's not working for dolphins, because you're not going to dolphin school. You need to figure out the thing that is aligned for you, who you are. Don't try to turn yourself into a shark, because even if that works, you're going to be miserable because you're not a shark. So metaphorically, that is like what's at stake here in terms of figuring out what's aligned for you. So an awareness that I had earlier today, as I was thinking about like making decisions in a turbulent world, is to try to have a self-awareness of recognizing when we're making misaligned decisions. And in the world of overcompensation, what most people are teaching, I think, and what most people are buying, against supply and demand, is the avoidance of things that we're afraid of. So that means if you're afraid of sales, you'll be more likely to buy a program that says how to build a business without being salesy. You're like, ooh, I don't like being salesy. That sounds good. Or how to be a powerful public speaker and not care about what anybody says about you. Oh, that sounds really good. How can I turn off my caring mechanism? If you have something that you're afraid of and somebody is offering you a way to avoid that fear, it's more likely bullshit. If you believe the concept that if you really want to get good competency wise, if you really want to grow and evolve, you've got to lean into yourself. If you buy that concept, then anything that tells you you're going to be able to avoid that process is probably bullshit. But man, it sounds so good. It just sounds so good, because that's what we hope is true. But here's a distinction that I want you to consider. Again, those pathways, right? Symptoms versus systems. In the symptom pathway, they're going to teach you to avoid things you're afraid of. In the systems pathway, you're going to learn how to handle the things that you're afraid of. One of these is an avoidance strategy. The other one is a capacity strategy, right? So yeah, there's a bunch of landmines over here. There's feedback. There's people's opinions of me. There's all the negativity. There's rejection. There's all the stuff that I'm afraid of. So let me learn how to avoid the landmines. And it's terrifying because if you make the wrong step, and you might die metaphorically, then you have to be like hyper vigilant, making sure you don't step on the landmines. But what if instead of that, you built the capacity in your body to realize that you're bigger than any of the landmines anyway? So bring on the feedback, bring on the rejection, bring on the failure, bring on all those things that are part of this process, because I'm bigger than them anyway. So the system pathway is about expanding your capacity to manage and handle and overcome and overpower the things that your intellect is afraid of. The symptom pathway is about avoiding the things that your intellect is afraid of. And you just have to, well, I guess you don't have to, but I suggest that you understand that the avoidance strategy is never going to be congruent with the golden Buddha. It's never going to be congruent with creating aligned, authentic success. And then you'll always have to avoid, because you'll always be afraid of something. And I'd rather you not be afraid of something, at least afraid to the point where you're compelled to avoid it. I'd rather you just realize you're stronger than it. So that's the difference. It's the difference between coping with something and clearing something. And the process to growing your capacity, the process to growing your competency involves confronting obstacles. It involves confronting conflicts. It involves confrontation of the things that are actually holding you back. It involves confronting the embodiment. It involves confronting the fears. It involves confronting those things. So if you see a program, a philosophy, concept, or whatever that is telling you there's a process where you can avoid all those things, it's fake. Just don't, it's fake. Stop it. It's fake. If you get excited about the process because you're like, finally, there is a secret pathway around my fears. No, there's not. Finally, there's a way to sell without selling. No, there isn't. Finally, no, there's not. There's only one way through what you need to confront. And anything that's telling you there's another way is fake. That does not mean it might not work. Or that does not mean it will always not work. But it's worse if it does. Because if it's not real and it works, you're more likely to continue it. And my definition of real in this case is something that's authentic to you. If you need to be a different person in order to succeed, that's not success. If you need to be a different person in order to get somebody to date you, they're not dating you, they're dating the different representation of you. You're not even in a relationship with that person, nor are they in a relationship with the real you. They're in a relationship with all your clay. They don't even know your Buddha. So we don't know if your Buddha likes them or their Buddha likes you. And in relationships, most people's clays are meeting each other. And a lot of times the Buddhas never do. Or when they do, it's 5 years, 10 years down the road, right? Like that's this analogy. That's what's at stake here. If it's inauthentic to you, success is more dangerous than failure. So if you find yourself getting excited because this process will finally allow you to avoid the thing you're afraid of, it's fake. Just stop. Stop. It's fake. Or if it's telling you there's a step-by-step process, there's this linear way to get really good. There's a linear way to become a world-class pianist. There's a linear way. You just do this. You do this for 2 hours a day, and you learn just these songs, and you do just this amount, and 320 sessions later, you're going to be a world. No, there's not. There is no linear path to mastery. There is no linear path to human growth. There is no linear path to deep competency. There is no linear path. So if somebody says, I got this linear path, I got this simple 5-step no, it's fake. That doesn't mean that it can't work. It doesn't mean that it can't be helpful. But if you believe there's no linear path to mastery, then you won't purchase linear paths. Or at least you won't expect the linear paths. Now, it doesn't mean that it can't be helpful to go, okay, these are the 5 steps to putting together a webinar sequence. Okay, great. Awesome. But don't believe that the 5 steps putting together a webinar sequence is going to be the foundation that you need to build a business and to become an entrepreneur. If you're committed to mastery, you won't fall for the fake shortcuts. But your mind will always want them. Just give me you'll always want them. The other thing is mastery is messy. And healing is messy. It could be emotionally messy. It could be energetically messy. It could be time messy. It's messy. Why? Because you're a mess. That's why. You are a mess. So am I. Humans are messy. We are just this collection of non-stop complex movements with all these layers of protection and a brain that can create anything to scare us or inspire us. We are a mess. So anything that tries to tell you that they have this clean path to mastery, it's fake. It'll never be clean. It'll never be easy. It'll never be comfortable. Here's the thing. If you sign up for the messiness, if you sign up for the discomfort, if you sign up for the outcome of rooted transformation, then it'll be much easier for you to manage the experience of the process along the way because you've signed up for the outcome. If you just sign up for the process and you want the process to be nice and easy and clean and clear and linear and predictable, you're never going to get to mastery because you're just going to fall for all these things. I hope this is making sense, and I hope it's landing the way that I'm intending it to land. Because we have to buy ideas before we buy execution of those ideas. We have to buy ideas, and we have to commit to certain things. We have to commit to foundational mastery if we're actually going to grow. And then here's the cool thing. It can go faster. If you commit to long term, it can actually go faster. And if you manage your expectations, your level of misery will be lower. We can't change an uphill road and make it go downhill, but we can set you up to succeed or set ourselves up to succeed as much as possible to make the climb as doable as we can and make it go as quickly as we can, right? But the path is the path is the path because we're talking about human transformation. And one of the things that I think is a tragedy in our society is that we've been sold the idea that transformation is easy and predictable and fast and comfortable. As soon as we buy the idea, we will go on a search for the product, the program, the person that can deliver that idea. If you never buy the idea that it's fast and easy and comfortable, then you'll reject 90% of the sales pitches right out of the gate. Or at least you won't think it's sufficient, right? Again, it's not that you don't need to clean the attic, you do, but it's not sufficient. And while you're doing attic work, you're not doing basement work. So going back to everything that I've said, stability, rootedness, being grounded, all of that is embodiment work. And if you're willing to have that embodied leadership and certainty, then there's really nothing that you can't manage. So with this last part of this session, I don't know how much longer we're going to go, but I appreciate you all being here. With this last part of the session, I'm going to get even more and more detailed with some of the things that we talked about or that we promised, some of the things that I promised in the emails about this. So we're going to talk about regulating yourself in a turbulent world, talk about how to support clients that are stuck or scared or traumatized, how to be a leader in all conversations, not just political conversations, but how to lead powerfully. Some of the skills that you need to pierce people's attention, how to be trustworthy, how you can be rooted, and how to sell transformation in a polarized society. I've already said a lot of these things or alluded to a lot of these things. I just didn't put like specific bows on them or put them in these exact buckets that we had talked about. But let's go ahead and knock some of these out. So the first one is how to regulate yourself in this turbulent world. You have to be aware of yourself. You have to look in. You have to spend time with self. That could look like meditation. It could look like journal writing. It could look like singing, dancing, going on walks, something. But you have to pay attention to yourself if you have any chance to regulate yourself. And then you will be able to better discern when things or people or ideas or programs are misaligned with who you are. The reason that most people don't make aligned choices is because they don't know themselves enough to choose alignment. If you don't know what your puzzle piece looks like, how can you find another puzzle piece that fits? You don't know what yours is. And if you don't know what yours is, then every puzzle piece is potentially the right choice, especially if it's being sold by a good salesperson. So a lot of people are purchasing the correct puzzle piece that's wrong for them. It's correct for somebody, but not for you. But you will never be able to know that until you know what your puzzle piece is. Now, what does that mean? You have to look in the mirror. And I've thought for the longest time, I still believe this wholeheartedly, the scariest thing to a human being is the mirror. Because it's what we've been looking away from the whole time, right? It's what we've been trying to suppress. It's what we've been trying to forget. It's what we've been trying to not look at. We're just trying to like, don't look, don't make me look at. I don't like the way I look. I don't like the way I feel. I don't like the way I do things. I don't like this. I don't like that. My childhood should have been different. I should have been different. Like, we're so scared of what the mirror represents. Most of us. I'm not putting that on all of us, but most of us are more afraid of looking directly at ourselves, eye to eye, and lean in than to look away and get external, superficial solutions, right? So the solution is always going to involve the mirror. It's simultaneously the scariest thing and it's the most liberating thing. They come hand in hand. And every single one of you is courageous enough to look in the mirror. Whether you think you are or not, you are. And if you got to do some work around there or get some support around it, great. I personally think every single person on this planet needs coaching. We're not designed to get the most out of ourselves. We're not designed to touch what we could otherwise access. We're not designed to do that. We're designed to constantly protect ourselves. We're designed to hold back a little bit. We're designed to reserve our energy, preserve our energy. We're designed in a way that isn't conducive to getting the most out of us. We are not designed to look into, not only are we not designed to look into our blind spots, we're not capable of looking into our blind spots. And our breakthroughs are always in our blind spots. So if you don't get support from somebody that can help illuminate your blind spots and help you deal with them, get curious, heal whatever needs to be healed, if you're not doing that work, there's a ceiling that you'll never be able to bust through. And your potential resides above that ceiling. But the good news is that ceiling was self-imposed. So you do have potential beyond that, but we need to get out of our way. We are not designed to help ourselves maximize our potential. We're just not. As human beings, we're not. So please don't try to be the first person in human history to do that. But it is possible. So if you want to regulate yourself in this turbulent world, a distinction that I want you to pay attention to is when you're reacting and when you're creating. You cannot do both of those things at the same time. When we're plugging into the news, when we're watching videos, when we're listening to podcasts, when we're consuming things from other people, we are only reacting. When we're journal writing, when we're creating our own content, when we are speaking, we are creating. Those are two different pathways. They are two different sets of tracks. Most of us, myself included, generally get up in the morning and put ourselves on the reaction track. Why? Because we look at our phone, we check emails, we look at the notifications, we do everything that we can to, or maybe not everything that we can, but we first go, okay, who needs me? Where do I need to go? You tell me where you want my attention. Where you want my attention? What do you want me to react to? And we put ourselves on the track of reaction and then get frustrated that we're not creating on the train track of reaction. Because you can't. So one of the best things to do in the morning is start creating. That's one of the things I recently did because I had this realization of myself just recently. Got a little journal next to the bed, and as soon as I get up, I don't do this every single day, but my intention is to grab the journal and just write something because these are my thoughts. So I'm letting myself know I am creating first. And then if I look at the emails, I look at the notifications, okay, but I've at least started creating first. And that opens us up to a different energy. It opens us up to a different, like, neurological state. But I think most people are so plugged into the reactions of all these things. And when you're not grounded and you don't have footing and you're caught up in the politics, in the algorithms, in the ecosystems, You can't create with your feet not on the ground. You cannot. You can only react to the current. So pay attention to when you're creating and when you're reacting. Leaders create more than they react. In fact, I will say that reaction is not a leadership quality. And I'm talking about, like, I'm not talking about pivoting. That can be under the word reacting. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about, like, oh, look at that thing that just give me a dopamine hit. Let me click on that. That's this compulsion of reaction, right? Reacting to the circumstances, seeing which way the wind's blowing, changing the sails. Yeah, that's reacting, but that's still more like active reaction, right? It's like creative reaction. So I don't mean that kind, but I mean just, oh, you got my attention. Where do you want to take it? Oh, but now you have my attention. Where do you want to take it? What do you want me to do? That's the kind of reaction that puts us in a passive mode. And then we're a victim of whatever whoever has our attention in the moment, wherever they want to take us. So that's a high level set of invitations and suggestions on regulating yourself. And it's a process. You're going to have to learn about yourself. You're going to have to learn, what your triggers are. You're going to have to learn what a good routine is. You're going to have to learn, how to, like, the reason a lot of people don't set themselves up properly in the morning is because they don't have an intentional routine in the evening. If you don't set yourself up intentionally in the evening, then it's hard to start the day with intentionality, right? So there's all kinds of things you're going to have to learn, but you have to pay attention to yourself first. And so this distinction between reacting and creating is one of the biggest things that I think you can look at. And then the other just concept I would say is just focus on presence. Can you be present with your breathing? Breath is one of the best ways to regulate, because it causes us, especially if you just stop and close your eyes and breathe, it forces you to be present. It forces you to pay attention to something that has rhythm. It forces you to become aware of things that you're not normally aware of, because we generally breathe unconsciously, right? So it does a lot of stuff to get you in the moment. And then you can change the way you breathe and actually change the cellular makeup of your body in the moment if you breathe from your diaphragm. So breath is one of the best ways to stay present and then to regulate yourself. All right, the second topic here is, how do you support clients who feel stuck, scared, and traumatized? This is going to be really fast because it's everything I've been talking about. It's embodiment and systems work. That's the only way to actually help people transform. Embodiment and systems work. But that means you as a coach, you as a leader, need to go through embodiment and systems work. If you don't go through it as a client, you're not going to be able to lead it as a coach. If you don't go through it as a student, you're not going to be able to teach it as a teacher. You have to have this in your body. And then you can expand your capacity to lead from that place. If you really want to help people change their lives, that requires systems work. And it requires them to go into the basement. And so you have to do the same thing. So that's as much as I want to say on that. I'm going to go a little bit out of order here. The most critical skill you need in today's world to pierce people's attention shields. A few things come up. Number one, distinction. The brain actually cannot ignore something it hasn't seen before. Neurologically, the brain cannot dismiss something it hasn't seen before, because the brain has to know if this new thing needs to be explored. What is this thing? And this is like the primal function of our brain. We see something, we've never seen it before. Is it food? Is it a potential mate? Is it dangerous? Can I use it? Is it useful? The brain needs to understand something it hasn't seen before. So when you show up authentically, that's the good news. Nobody else has ever seen your authentic version, because you are unlike anybody else. So if you show up authentically, your distinction will cause people to, at the very least, they have to pay attention because they've never seen this before. Now, they might pay attention immediately, but then dismiss it because they're not interested in the topic or they have judgments or whatever, but they can't not pay attention. That's the most important way for us to be distinct, or the most important way, rather, to pierce people's attention filters is give them something they haven't seen before. That's simple. It's just scary. It's simple because it's your authenticity, it's your vulnerability. It's just scary because we've been protecting our vulnerability and our authenticity for a long time, because once upon a time we were all punished for being vulnerable and authentic. So it's simple but scary. But you have the capacity to handle that fear. Look in the mirror, do all the things we're talking about, and you can actually do this and build your capacity. And then you'll have people's attention. Once you have their attention, in order to keep their attention, you've got to give them something real that they can experience. That could be in your content. It could be the delivery of your content. It could be the consumption of your content, meaning like you could have a different set of lighting, or you could have a different kind of wardrobe that you use. You could have a different mode of talking or speaking or adding poetry or singing or whatever. So it could be in the execution or the delivery of it could be distinct enough to hold people's attention. But I think the most compelling attention grabber is transparency. Transparency is so it's so yummy. Transparency is so contagious. When you see a transparent human, because it's so rare, especially online, when you see a transparent human, it will generally draw us in. And we're powerless against it. So if you become that transparent human and allow people to be drawn into your transparency, now it can be mesmerizing. And now they can hear things they wouldn't hear or feel things they wouldn't feel. And now you've got their attention from a distinction standpoint, but now you've also got their experiential trust. Because now you're giving them experience that they haven't had before. So it's a perception distinction and an experiential distinction. And again, it's easy, it's just scary. Well, it's simple and scary. Not necessarily easy emotionally, but it's simple and scary. But because most of us have been in the shadows for a long time, it's going to take a while for you to hit the spotlight and have your message evolve and take hold. I always say your message needs oxygen to evolve. You need to say a bunch of stuff a bunch of times and let it evolve. Most people are expecting the first time that they say something to be the best time they're ever going to say it. And in reality, it'll be the worst time you're ever going to say it because it's the first time you're ever going to say it. But you got to say it the first time in order to get to the second time, which is hopefully a little better, in order to get to the third time, which is hopefully a little better, right? So you got to get in motion. Simple, but scary. But in today's algorithmic world, if you are as bold as you possibly can be with your transparency, your vulnerability, then the distinction happens on its own. The compulsion happens on its own. They're compelled to pay attention. And you got to keep going. It's not just like one thing is going to cause somebody to go, oh, wow, I really like this person's vulnerability. Let me go onto their website and just pay for the highest price coaching package. It's not how it works. But they'll pay attention. The next time they see you, they're more likely to listen again. They're more likely to consume it again. You have to be consistent, right? As a lighthouse, you have to keep shining your light, because from the boat, from your lighthouse, the light is constantly on, but from the boat, they just see little pulses. And if the pulses stop, then the boat doesn't know where to go. So you have to keep pulsing. You have to keep putting out messages, content, videos, podcasts, articles, social media posts. You have to keep pulsing. Your light needs to keep shining for the boats to eventually get to your shore. too many people will be like, okay, I want to be a lighthouse. I just want to throw this one beam of light out there and then watch everybody come. No, not how it works. The next conversation here, which is very much aligned with this, where we're already going, is how to be trustworthy in a world that doesn't trust. See, I think all the polarization and profitization, all the things I've been talking about, has caused us to not trust each other, caused us to not trust certain sources, caused us not to trust media, not to trust the internet, not to trust online, not to trust marketers, not to trust salespeople. So we're less trusting, I think, as a society than we've ever been. Because again, over the last 5 years, especially during COVID, we've been taken advantage of. We bought a lot of things. We believe certain things that weren't true or whatever. So humans are less trusting, I think, than they've ever been. And if they don't trust you, there's zero chance that they will hire you to help them change their life. They might hire your widgets. They might buy your widgets. They might learn from you how to flip money in the real estate market or something like that. Or how to flip houses and make more money, or how to, like they could learn transactional stuff without trust. They'll never purchase transformational stuff without trust, because it's a vulnerable conversation for them. So they have to trust you. The way that they trust you is all the things that I'm saying. Be vulnerable, be real, be distinct, be different, be consistent. And eventually they'll start to trust you. In today's world, you have to meet people. I suggest you pretend nobody trusts you and try and do everything you can to earn your trust, rather than to assume that everybody trusts you and then not even address it, because they'll just keep on going. And the best way to create that kind of trust at an embodied level is to give people experiences of yourself, experiences of themselves, and then you'll give them experiences in their body that they can't deny. That's an easier way to trust. And then you can sell whatever you want to sell, like the strategies, the sales techniques, the marketing techniques, all those things are important. But if you don't have all of this that I'm talking about, they're going to be useless, because they're not sufficient. They're important along with all of this. So once you have somebody's trust, yes, then you can put together a webinar campaign. But if you put together a webinar campaign that has all the shiny bullets and has all the things that really work in somebody else's market, but they don't trust you, your nice shiny webinar campaign is useless because they don't trust you. So the icing has to have cake for it to be useful. Otherwise, you're just slinging icing, and you're just going to give people toothaches, or you're going to get a toothache, right? We need a cake. That's really what this foundation is about. All right, so another bullet is, how can you be rooted in your confidence and certainty? I've alluded to this a lot as well. Embodiment, grounding, finding your footing, deep exploration of yourself. How do you see the world through all your different lenses? How does the world see you through its lenses? How do people see you through its lenses? How do you continue to talk and let your message evolve and put a bunch of content out there so that you find the rhythm of creation? All those things are possible, but they're not predictable and they're not quick. If you really want true certainty and confidence, you have to go through the process that produces certainty and confidence as a byproduct. And most people are just trying to buy conceptually or financially the certainty and confidence, and then they'll do the things with certainty and confidence. It's the opposite. You have to do things when you don't have certainty and confidence in order to eventually produce the certainty and confidence. And it could be a messy period. So then the question is, how quickly do you want to get through it? One of the most important things I remember hearing in an entertainment standpoint, like a movie maker, a filmmaker one time said, the best advice he ever got was one of his mentors said, everybody's going to make 10 shitty movies. The difference between a Steven Spielberg and people that you never know about is Spielberg got his done fast. And I don't know that that's actually literally true with that name, but the concept is you're going to be bad before you get okay, and you have to move through okay before you get good. And nearly everybody wants to get good before they do anything. And so he just said, so the question is, how fast are you going to make 10 shitty movies? And just by the process of activity, making 10 bad movies will teach you lessons that preparing for one good movie never could. So that's my message to all of you. How you're going to make bad videos. The question is, how quickly you're going to get those out of your system. How quickly you're going to learn the things that you can learn while you're making bad videos, while you're making bad podcasts, while you're making bad articles, while you're creating bad things. And it's all relative. I'm not saying it's bad like it's not useful, but it's bad compared to where it's going to go, because it's going to get better. So your first video is likely going to be your worst video because it's your first video, assuming that you're going to constantly iterate and get better. Your worst one's comparatively going to be your worst. Your first one's going to be your worst one. Great, get through it, move past it. One of the best ways to manage the emotional destruction, using a little bit of hyperbole here, but the emotional destruction of video number 1 is to do video number 2 as fast as you can. Then you'll move into the emotional destruction of video number 2, but at least we're not on video number 1 anymore. And then the best way to get through the emotional destruction of video number 2 is create video number 3 as fast as you can. Get there. Get it out of your system. Get it out. Get it out. Because you got to be more committed to growth than comfort. And creativity is not a comfortable process. You gotta move. You gotta go. Let's go. You gotta iterate. You gotta pivot. You gotta learn. Let's go. So in our programs, we do everything we possibly can to explain to people and support people to just create. And people ask us questions all the time, like, what social media platform should I do? How should I price my programs? What kind of videos should I do? How long should my videos be? And I'm like, not only do I not know your product, you don't know your product. I don't know. You don't even know yourself. You got to get this stuff out. Learn yourself. There's a rhythm. There's creativity. There's so many things that you can only learn through ignorant action. So get through it. This is one of the areas where speed wins. If you do 10 bad videos inside of a week, you will learn a lot more than 10 bad videos in 10 weeks. Speed increases the learning. Speed increases the muscles. Let's go. Let's get it out. Let's go. Let's go. Oh, you don't like it? Yeah, I didn't like my first 80 either. But the first 80 is what led to the next 800. Let's go. I'm not trying to be dismissive. I'm just saying this is the process, right? You can't expect a microwave process to produce mastery. You just can't. But you can get the support to move you through this. So then one more distinction on everything I'm talking about is when you're selling transformational coaching, you need the trust, you need the attention, you need the vulnerability, you need all those things. But you need to sell experiences that they cannot deny rather than expectations that they can question. If your sales technique is, if you do this, then you'll get that, you're selling an expectation. And they're going to question it because you're selling from your attic to their attic. But if you get in their basement and you give them an experience and their body goes, I consumed this thing and I felt a different way. I used this communication technique and I created a different experience in my relationship. I did this routine in the morning and I had a different level of energy in the evening. That is undeniable experience. And then your sales pitch becomes, that thing that I taught you and you gave you a good experience. Do you want more of that? Yeah. Okay, great. Well, here's my program. That's essentially what sales looks like when you're delivering experiences rather than intellectual expectations. But now here's the thing. In order to be able to deliver experiences, you need competency. You need competency in those of you that saw the ECCP slides. I'm gonna show you again if you didn't see them in a few minutes. But you need competency in the way the brain works. You need competency in that whole pinball machine of human behavior. You need competency to actually deliver experiences. And then when you can actually deliver experiences, you will be more valuable to people. And when you're more valuable to people, they will value you more. Meaning they will pay you or pay higher prices for you because your competency has increased your experiential value to them. But for that, you have to study. There is no shortcut path to raising your real experiential value, your quality. There is no shortcut path to increase quality. There is a way. It's going to take a while. I don't know how long. I'm not going to try to predict it for anybody. I don't know. But I know the shortcut will never work. That's what I do know. And however long it takes is shorter than never. So choose. And a lot of people will say things like, I don't know. I had somebody tell me the other day, we were talking about confronting a lot of things that were going on in their life. And I said, what if it takes a year to do this? Would it be worth whatever you have to go through in a year to have the rest of your life be full of emotional control and healing and all this stuff? And they said, I don't know. I don't know. I don't think so. So then I just said, well, a year's shorter than never. So however long it is, it's better than not. But I also understand not everybody thinks that way, and I totally get it. But again, you got to understand if it's possible and it's long term, when you commit to the long term, it'll actually be shorter most of the time than it would have been if you're only committing to short term. And you have to do the embodiment work. All right, so I have one more thing to talk about, but it's going to be a little bit longer. It's what I think is leadership in this polarized world, and how you can talk about politics, or how you can talk about religion, how you can explore people's behaviors, and how you can actually unite the gangs, so to speak. And it's not only person versus person. We all have an internal gang war going on as well, between right and wrong, and good and bad, and comfort and discomfort. We all have an internal gang. And that conflict can absolutely be unified. It can be integrated. And we can do this work with people. So let me give you what my working definition of leadership is for this conversation. My working definition is doing what you can for the most benefit of the most people. That's my working definition for this context of leadership. I don't think that's always the definition of leadership in all contexts, but for what I'm about to say, that's my working definition. Doing the most benefit for the most people, and bringing people together, right? The most benefit for the most people. That's my working definition of leadership right now. Now, usually that's not the most profitable definition of leadership. It's actually way more profitable to be a gang leader than to try to unite the gangs. It's way more profitable to be a leader inside the tribe and to go with people's already established beliefs and patterns. It's way easier to go with the grain than against it. It's easier to sell addicts drugs than therapy. It's more financially lucrative to sell drugs to addicts than therapy to addicts. And so if your working definition of leadership is making the most amount of money, then I don't know why you'd still be here listening to any of this anyway. But if your working definition is making the most amount of money, then do whatever you need to do to that end. And unfortunately, I do think the working definition of leadership and success, it for a lot of people in a lot of situations, is that. How do I make the most amount of money? And I think one of the things that a lot of us don't pay attention to in that quest for money is, how do I get the most amount of fulfillment? And since money doesn't lead to fulfillment by itself, if you don't have that as part of your recipe, you can become fabulously rich and infuriatingly miserable. But again, you need to decide what what your definition of success is, what your definition of leadership is, etc. So I've had a few people ask, what do I do about politics specifically? So I want to hit this nail right on the head. Because so many people, have obviously opinions that they have, but they don't know exactly how to say it. And I'm not going to say that I do it, the right way, um, but I do it in an intentional way, at least. And it doesn't always produce the outcome that I hope it produces. But here's my suggestion for any of you specifically in the political world. And this will apply to religion. It will apply to anything that's controversial. But let's just talk about politics for a second. My suggestion is for you to first decide what part you want to play in the political discourse. And if your answer is, I don't want to play at all, awesome. I don't believe anybody has an obligation to play a role that they don't want to play. So, but just do it intentionally, right? And just know that you obviously can't influence anything that you're not participating in either. So then if you do want to influence it, well, then now we've got other factors to consider, right? How do you want to influence it? And if you buy my assertion that we live in a political gang war, especially in America here, there's two sides. Literally, it's blues versus reds, right? Which is, if you know anything about the gangs out here in the country, and specifically in this state that I live in, Southern California, it's Crips versus Bloods. I mean, it's blues versus reds. And in that literal gang war, if somebody is representing the red color and they see a blue color, that's all they need to know. And sometimes they'll kill somebody, literally kill them if they have the wrong color. And that is that's so reductive, right? It reduces us to our attachments to a certain symbol or a certain color or a certain philosophy or whatever. And it removes, the nuances of humanity, but it's profitable. So I think if you want to be influential, then you need to decide, as I said a moment ago, do you want to be a gang leader? Because you could be a more profitable gang leader than a gang uniter. And if you want to be a gang leader, awesome. Then sell the gang what they want. Sell them the vitriol. Sell them the personification of certain, evil factors that are going on in the world. Tell them that these people are trying to take your rights away, trying to take away what you already have. Because both sides are actually doing that. Again, it's like a Mad Lib of sorts, right? And you can decide if you want to villainize people and get people all riled up as the gang leader. Awesome. If that's what you want, that's fine. I genuinely, I don't personally have any judgment, at least as much as I can possibly remove, from people that intentionally go, you know what? But right now I'm going to make a lot of money riling up the gang. Okay. Now, I personally don't think that's beneficial. It just strengthens both sides and removes the ability to unite. But if somebody's going to choose that, then choose that. But just know what your consequences are. Because if you align yourself with one of the gangs, then don't be surprised when the other gang turns on you. That's because that's the choice you made. This idea, I think it's such a lazy, juvenile idea to think that you're going to make a choice and align yourself with one of the two gangs, and then when the other gang attacks you, claim victim. I mean, you chose a side. And I think in the political world, the extremes of both sides are not helpful. So if you align yourself with the extreme of either side, you're not helping the situation. So then I think it becomes, well, let's talk about something that, again, maybe controversial, but I'm going to try to keep it as objective as possible. Let's talk about Elon Musk. He's a very polarizing figure now. Elon Musk chose a side. Now, he owns a company in Tesla, which is an electric vehicle company. And the side that is more likely to believe in electric vehicles is the progressive side of the aisle. But he chose the conservative side of the aisle and then became very polarizing. Last I heard, his company is plummeting. So I'm just saying that he made a choice, picked a side, and then the other side is rebelling against him. I mean, you chose a side, dude. Like, you can't have it both ways. You can't choose a side and then expect, there to not be a reaction. So as neutrally as possible, I think Elon is an interesting study. And we'll see if it changes. We'll see if he's able to regain the trust of the side that he chose to demonize when they are more likely buyers of his product. But that's business. That's capitalism. People vote with their wallets. But for him to choose a side and then claim victimhood is ridiculous. So we need to make that choice too, right? Now, of course, we don't have the level of influence that Elon has, or politicians have, or Trump, or anybody else, right? We don't have that level of influence. But pick the message. And if choosing a side is what you want to do, that's fine. But pick the message that your soul needs to say. And just consider all the things, right? And just get on record saying the things that you want to say, and then however people are going to react to you, that's how they're going to react to you. Now, what I would suggest, though, in the conversations is that you address systems and not symptoms. Because, like, as long as we make, if people don't like Elon Musk, let's say, as long as we make Elon Musk the villain, but the real problem is the system, then even if we, even if you destroy Musk's net worth and all that stuff, you still haven't changed the system. So I think you need to be really clear. Are you trying to take people down, or are you trying to take systems down? And just, aim appropriately. And it's really hard. It is really hard. And in today's world, if you try to take a stance on something, the extreme sides of the other team are probably going to attack you, and you're going to lose whatever. You're going to lose friendships, you're going to lose trust, you're going to lose business. I mean, there's no doubt that I've lost business, certainly lost friendships for the things I've said on social media or in person. But it's it's what my soul needs to say, and I'm okay. I'm okay with losing friendships. I'm okay with losing business if it's more aligned with what my soul needs to say. But if you're not at that point, then I also don't think you need to be compelled to, like, obligated from a shame perspective. It's especially to say something that could have consequences that you don't want to endure. For instance, I don't agree with a lot of the politicians who make certain choices, but I understand that their life is on the line, or their livelihood is on the line, or their salary is on the line, or their power is on the line, or their standing in their community is on the line, or who they are in their family is on the line. So I get it. I get it from the standpoint that if I make this choice, I'm going to lose everything that I'm attached to in my life. So I understand from that standpoint people that would otherwise make certain choices or otherwise speak out about certain things but not be willing to do it because their whole life will be uprooted. I understand that. So if your whole life, and okay, so another example, when we in 2020 we Lisa Nichols and I and a man named David Bianchi filmed a movie called Let's Grow, and it was tackling racism. And we had a lot of people in the personal development industry saying that they wanted to back the program and they wanted to, they wanted to mail to their communities, right? Like we wanted to have this big, hopefully constructive conversation about racism, and let's tear down some of the walls and let's get dangerous, in terms of not like dangerous with each other, but let's get like almost dangerously vulnerable with ourselves, right? Like let's get scary vulnerable and let's talk across the aisle, and let's talk black, white, man, woman, like everybody in between, like let's talk. And we wanted to have these big dialogues, and we had a lot of people in the personal development industry who said 100% I'm in. I'm gonna, like, I've got an email list of 5 million people and we're gonna mail this out, we're gonna blah blah blah. Nearly nobody mailed anything. Out of, let's call it 100 people, I think maybe 4, not of 100 potential, like 100 people that said they would. I think maybe 4 people actually did it. And at the time, it was like a letdown for us. But then in exploring it, I realized I get it, because their business is on the line. And if they have created a community on a certain conversation and then they infuse their community with race, that's dangerous. That's dangerous to their community. And so I got to the point where I understood that there are major consequences to commitments that we make. And if those consequences are something that you individually are not willing to endure, because you don't have to say something strong enough to risk whatever it is that you might lose, I get it. I get it. So then figure out where what you are willing to risk and what you have to say in your soul. Because if you're not aligned, it's not going to work. Either way, it's not going to work. If you're afraid of losing certain things, but you still want to say something, but you say it half-ass, it's not going to work, and you're going to lose the things, right? So you're not even going to commit to the thing that you want to say, and you're going to lose what you're afraid of losing. So it's not going to work. But if you go, my heart needs to say this thing, and as a result of that, I'm probably going to lose some business over there. I might lose some friends. I might get some attacks, whatever. But I have to say this thing. Then when the attacks come or when the business gets lost, you'll be okay because you already pre-considered that. You already prepared for it. And then when somebody goes, when they attack you or they leave you, you're like, oh, well, I already made arrangements for that. It was part of the calculation. And that's an individual choice that each of you need to make. And then deal with the consequences. But also remember that the more bold you are with your messaging, you're going to pull people out of the woodwork that weren't there before also. So yes, you're going to lose some people. The more bold any message is, regardless of whether we're talking about politics, religion, any of the controversial stuff, or you just go all in that the way to change your life is through meditation. The more bold you are with your certainty, you're going to lose people that don't agree with you, but you're also going to gain people that didn't know you were so bold, and they needed you to be that bold in order to go, yeah, I'm going to rock with this person. So there's always going to be a trade-off. Now, you never know if you're going to lose more than you're going to gain, or vice versa, but you will gain more people when your message gets more bold. Just you don't know who they are. Whereas you know the people that you lose because they were already there, right? So that's, again, part of the calculation. You're dealing with the unknown here. But ultimately, I'm at a point in my life. Maybe it's because it's age. I got like 4 gray hairs in my beard now. I used to only have 3, but now I got 4. Who knows? Who cares? Why? Maybe it's just the state of the world. But I personally just value fulfillment and authenticity and alignment so much more than I value money or status or vanity or whatever. And I think you just need, individually, you need to decide what it is that you value the most and then choose accordingly. There's one final thing. I know we're heading into 3 hours here. I appreciate you guys so much. I hope this is landing for you. If you have any questions, anything you want to add to the conversation, please do. I haven't been looking at the comment section, so I'm not ignoring anybody. I'm just trying to stay somewhere on track for this 90-minute session. So the last thing I want to say is I want to give you some communication concepts that are so insanely powerful. Like, this pierces so many of the problems for yourself personally too. When we say anything out of this face hole that we have, or when we create anything, we type anything, whatever, everything we say is going to fall into one of 3 buckets, basically. Or everything that we do is going to be driven. Everything we think is going to be driven by one of these 3 buckets. So it's not necessarily only the things that we say or the things that we create. But this fundamentally changed my life when I learned this. And I learned this in an embodiment course, interestingly, because it's language. It's more intellect and addict work. But I learned it in the embodiment course because it absolutely helps us stay rooted and helps us stay grounded and helps us pierce through and discern what's real, what's fake, or what's aligned, what's not. So the first thing I want to talk about is assumptions. We all have assumptions that we're operating on. And the assumptions that we have form the lenses that we see the world through. So if we assume somebody's out to get us, then we'll find the people who are out to get us because we're operating on the assumption that somebody's out to get us. If we assume that there's a quick fix way to heal traumas, then we will search for those quick fix ways. We'll fall for the fake stuff because we've assumed that it's possible, right? So our assumptions determine what we look for and what we dismiss. Most of our assumptions are unconscious, and therefore we don't question them, we don't look at them, we don't detach from them, we just operate on them. And because they're unconscious and we just operate without checking in, we think our assumptions are facts. Like indisputable, objective facts, just because we assume them to be true. And it's just not the case. Assumption is an assumption. It's not a fact. But when you tell people that they're operating on assumptions, they usually don't like to hear it. And they really don't like to have it challenged. It's like what I said earlier. Somebody said, blah, blah, blah. Somebody said, what's your evidence? And then the first person just attacked. So when people get their assumptions attacked, even if it's just a simple challenge, like, oh, that's interesting, tell me more, explain that. If there's insecurity behind the assumption, they're more likely to attack than actually explain. They're more likely to explode than explain because they can't explain. Because they're operating on assumptions that they're not aware of or they don't have control over, they don't understand, right? And people hate having their ignorance exposed. So rather than having our ignorance exposed, it's just easier to attack and try to shut somebody down than to explore questions that might highlight that I don't know what I'm talking about, or I don't understand the things that I believe. And I think a lot of people are in that boat. I think probably most people are in the situation where they firmly believe things they don't actually understand because they've never explored them, because they've never been questioned. And that's one of the problems in today's world of all the ecosystems that we live in. Inside the ecosystems, nobody's challenging the predominant thoughts. They're just agreeing with them. And if nobody's challenging the thoughts, then you don't actually understand what you agree with. Because I think you have to explore with conflict or contrast what you agree with in order to actually understand it. And what I'm about to say is not meant to be dismissive or demeaning in any way, but in the religious world, a lot of Christians and the Bible, or Jewish people and the Torah, and forgive me if I'm mispronouncing, or I'm certainly not a religious expert. Muslims in the Quran, if people don't have what they're reading challenged, then I believe they don't actually understand what they're reading. They can agree with what they're reading or what they're studying, but they don't understand it without challenge. And that's just a religious example. That's in no way, the only context, right? I don't think most people understand their own politics because nobody challenges them in their ecosystem of political agreement, or the ecosystem of religious agreement, or the ecosystem of gender agreement, or the ecosystem of conceptual agreement in any area. If all the people in the room agree, nobody's going to challenge each other. And if you don't challenge each other, you don't actually know truly. Not only do you not understand what you're all agreeing on, but if anybody else out there outside the ecosystem challenges you, you don't know how to respond because you've never seen anybody respond to challenges because you've never seen the challenges. So outside of our ecosystems, we're out ahead of our skis, meaning we don't actually understand the things that when we're in our ecosystems get celebrated, but outside the ecosystems get challenged, and you don't know how to address the challenge because nobody ever challenged you in the ecosystems. That's one of the problems with discourse, with trying to communicate inside, or trying to communicate across ecosystems, across the algorithmic virtual realities that we live in. My suggestion, it's not easy for me to do personally, but my suggestion is be open to having your ignorance exposed. And it sucks. It sucks. But it's really the only way for you to either recognize that you're operating on an assumption, it's not based in reality, or it gives you an opportunity to meet the challenge and actually deepen what you believe in what you already had assumed or what you already had believed is true, right? So without challenges, it goes back to that idea of, we are always taught, most of us are taught to not talk about politics, religion, or money. Well, because we're not taught to talk about it, we don't know how to talk about it. We don't know how to address challenges. So that's assumptions. And there's a few different words for assumptions. Sometimes we call it presuppositions inside of our certifications or beliefs. But assumptions are what they are. They're assumptions. They're not facts. They're assumptions. And it causes us to look through certain lenses. The second thing I want to talk about, you'll see everywhere. Assertions. An assertion is when somebody makes some kind of a declaration. All people are this. All Democrats are lunatics. All Republicans are racists. All men are dogs. All women are emotionally unstable. Assertions, I would say most of the time, come in universals. Because the bigger something is, the less likely it is to be challenged, especially by the people that already agree with you to some degree. So making universal assertions, it's a manipulation tactic, actually. When you make a universal assertion, the manipulatable, or the manipulation utility of it What makes it useful from a manipulation standpoint is the bigger and the more bold your universal assertions are, the less likely it is that anybody's going to question you. Because it just comes in such a certainty package. So all people are this, all smart people do this, common sense tells you this. Those are all assertions. When somebody makes an assertion, here's the lens that you have to run that through. Is it grounded in anything? An assertion is either grounded or not. Meaning, is there evidence for it? If you make assertion that all men are a certain thing, what's your evidence? How many men have proven to you that they are liars? If we're just using that as an example, right? So an assertion either has grounding or not. Please look at everything you consume, especially in the political world or any hyper-polarized controversial topic. Please look at everything you consume, and what you will find is nearly all the time there's an assertion with no grounding. But because we don't know about this, or we're not trained to ask for the evidence or for the grounding, how do you know this? What's your experience? We just have this assertion. And what happens in the manipulation of media is there are assertions made that are not true. It's actually called a straw man argument. There's a term for it. If you make a straw man argument, what you do is you make an assertion that's not actually true, or it's misleading, and then you go all in on the assertion. Two examples of this from different sides of the aisle. If you look at the media, if you look at like a right-wing media source like Fox News, Fox News is almost 100% assertion and then get angry at the assertion. But the assertion was never true. From the left-wing standpoint, from a media channel, kind of, apples to oranges, or as close to apples, right? Apples to pears conversation would be like, MSNBC, something that is much more extreme left-wing. They're going to make an assertion about Donald Trump and then just get you mad about the assertion the whole time. And quite often, the original assertion is not true, or it's not entirely true. The most effective manipulation tactics is when an assertion is made with a hint of truth in it, but then they get us angry at all the non-true stuff. I'm trying to think of a good example. The slippery slope argument would be a good example. I was in a conversation with a guy a long, long time ago about gun rights. And, I am of the opinion that that our civilization should not have military-grade weapons. That's my opinion. I don't think civilians need high-powered, artillery in their grasp. So I firmly believe that people should keep their guns, but not those guns. Not there's like a certain kind that I think should not be available to any citizens. But there's a slippery slope kind of idea. I got into a conversation with a guy one time, and he said, well, the reason I will not agree to getting rid of my, whatever the military style thing is, like AK-47 or whatever, the reason I won't do that is because as soon as they take that away, they're gonna take all of our guns away. That's an assertion. I asked him it was a political discussion. I said, who is putting forward a bill to get rid of all the guns? Because I personally haven't seen it. I know there are people that believe that, but I haven't seen an actual threat to all guns, nor is that ever going to happen. Like the The reality of that is just it's a 0% chance that that we're going to get rid of guns. But I asked, where's the grounding? I didn't say those words, but like, where's the evidence? Who's a bill? Who's a credible source that is saying, like, we want to get rid of guns? But from his perspective, there was an assertion. The assertion doesn't have grounding, but what he's really afraid of is getting his guns taken away. He's not actually afraid of the AK-47s. He's afraid of getting his guns taken away. So the assertion that they're coming for everything that you have, that's what he's afraid of, and that's where it becomes manipulation, because that assertion is not actually real. Now, I might be ignorant about this. There might be legislation out there. I don't know. But I was asking him for the legislation because it's like, if there's legislation out there, I want to know about it, because these are the kinds of things I'm actually interested in, right? So if there's legislation, I'd like to know. And who knows? So maybe I'm, factually not 100% correct, but that's an example. Like that's the only example that was coming to me in the moment, at least. So if you create an assertion, then you can get people really scared of the assertion. And if they never challenge the assertion, then you can use it as fact and they'll take it as fact. Grounding in evidence doesn't actually mean real either. I mean, it could still be something that's not factually real, but at least there's evidence for it, right? At least it's grounded in something, So I know somebody who hates cops. Great. What's your evidence? Well, I've been roughed up by this cop, then this guy planted drugs on me and blah, blah, blah. Okay. At least there's grounding there, right? Now, if he makes the assertion that all cops are corrupt, I don't agree with that. But there's grounding because all the cops that he is focused on, that he has experienced, have been corrupt, right? So at least there's grounding there. At least we know there's something there that the assertion is based on. My experience is when people are loud and rigid with their assertions, it's because there's no grounding. That's been my experience. When people are afraid of having their assertions attacked, it's because they have no grounding. And the easier thing to do than to admit, actually, you know what? I have no standing here. I don't know what the hell I'm talking about. The easier thing to do is just call your mom ugly. I don't think this is a 100% across the board, but in my experience, it's pretty close. So the less grounding people have, usually the more committed they are to the assertion, and the more willing they are to, fight dirty, so to speak. So what can you do with that? Number one, you could just, ask for grounding, ask for evidence, ask for a source. You could try to understand if you want. You don't have to, but if you want, you could do that. You'll start to see the difference between assertion and facts. That's one of the things I want you to see. But then from a leadership standpoint, don't make assertions that are not grounded. So it's a really good self-checking mechanism. This is my assertion. All people are this. All Republicans, all Democrats, all cops, all women, all men, all whatever are this. Where's my grounding? If you're not grounded in something, don't say it. Don't make an assertion that doesn't have grounding, that doesn't have evidence. So this will be a way for you to not participate in the fact-free gang war, so that at least the things that you talk about have grounding. And then what you'll see is nearly nobody wants to talk about it. At least in the the political world, in the online controversial world, nobody wants to talk about this stuff. They just want to argue. They just want to take shots at each other with no evidence, no grounding, but they just want, because it's emotionally exciting. It's emotionally activating to be in these states, and I think a lot of people are addicted to the emotional activation. Especially if people don't feel like they have a lot of passion or aliveness in their life, then even if it comes through fighting, at least it gives them the feeling of being alive. And a lot of people just want that, that activation. So from a leadership standpoint, don't make assertions that don't have grounding. And then if you make an assertion and you have grounding behind it, meaning you have evidence behind it, be willing for somebody else to counter with different evidence. Because just because you have a grounded assertion still does not make it fact. It just means you have a reason supporting what you just asserted. And that reason might be wrong. And so your assertion might be wrong. It's like if I just make an assertion that it's not raining outside, it's grounded because I'm currently dry. Okay, well then somebody opens up the door and goes, yeah, but look, I just came from outside and I'm wet. Okay, so now I'm wrong. I had a grounded assertion that was factually wrong. So we got to make these distinctions. We got to split hairs if we're going to try to have clean communication, I think. And if we're going to try to find unity and we're going to try to, unite the gangs in any way. It's not easy to do any of this stuff, especially online. It's almost impossible to do it online. But at least you can manage your own communication. And I would say just be willing to know what you are assuming to be true that might not be true, that might not actually be, real, might not be factual. Make grounded assertions and be willing for your assertions to be challenged and be willing for that grounding to be fake. Not fake, but not necessarily across the board true, right? Is this too geeky? Is it too hair splitty? I am a geek when it comes to this stuff. So, I ate this up when Scott taught me it. So the third thing is assessments. An assessment is where you take a look at something and you make a judgment based on whatever it is that you looked at. So now you're not even making an assertion of something, you're just making an assessment of something. And it's neutral. An assessment is, I got this information, I assessed it to mean this, and then I'm going to use it however I'm going to use it. I'm going to change my approach, or I'm going to walk away, or I'm going to sell something, or whatever. Assessing is more about exploration and curiosity. You want to assess things, and you can ask questions from a place of assessing and exploring without making assertions. In coaching, here's what that looks like. In coaching, somebody you might be talking to somebody, and somebody says something, and they look up and they smile. That person's happy is an assertion. If you say that person's happy, or you think that person's happy, that's an assertion. Now, it might be grounded because you saw him smile, but that's still an assertion. You're making a declaration that what you saw is declaratively an indication that person's happy. But it might not be happiness. They might just smile for some other reason. So a clean assessment would be something just changed in that person's physiology. That's a clean assessment. And then you ask a question. I just noticed that you just went into a smile there. Like, what happened? And sometimes people might go, I had the most amazing happy thought. Okay, great. Then it was happiness. Or I really don't want to talk about this thing. Please don't ask me. And it also comes through a smile, right? So from a coaching standpoint, removing the attachments to all these things and understanding the difference between assertions and assumptions and assessments will allow you to ask better questions. It'll allow you to be a better coach. It'll allow you to stay in a place of curiosity rather than coaching with your assertions or coaching with your assumptions. If you coach according to your assumptions, that's dangerous coaching. If you coach according to your assertions, internally or externally, that's dangerous coaching. If you coach according to your assessments, that's clean and healthy. Have at it. Go all in with that. Yeah. A smile can cover up pain, can cover up embarrassment, can cover up anxiety, or it can mean that somebody just needs to fart. That's what it means with babies a lot. Anyway. All right, we are landing this plane. We are landing this plane. I'm going to talk about ECCP one more time. The final thing I want to say, though, is it's really helpful in any kind of controversial conversations, any conversations really, but especially the ones that could get controversial, to seek agreement first. If you don't have agreement first, then any discussion about the thing that's not agreed upon is useless. And sometimes the agreement is macro. It's like, does this politician, is what this politician is doing, we'll talk about Trump or Biden, right? A lot of people think what Trump is doing to the country is destructive. But a lot of people think what Biden was doing to the country was destructive. So if you guys don't agree on what destructive to the country means, every moment after that is a waste of time, because you're using different definitions of what destructive to the country means, right? So for instance, I'm much more liberal. I personally care more about our community in our country internally than I do protecting ourselves from other countries. I understand that some people are more committed to protecting us from the enemy, the perceived enemy externally, than they are to look at what's going on internally. I'm oriented differently. I'm oriented to think, I don't care personally how protected our country is from other people if inside of it is chaotic. So I would prioritize the internal makeup of our country, more than the external protection of that country. And then somebody might come in and go, okay, so now what? Now we have a society where everybody loves each other and everybody accepts each other, and then Russia invades us. Okay, great. At least that's like logical conversation, right? At least that's okay. What happens if we don't have this protection on the outside of the country? Right. Okay, so now we can talk about how we define good for the country. I define good for the country from internal measurements, and a lot of people define good for the country from external measurements. If we can't come off of that, discussion is useless. Discussion is pointless because we don't have agreement on what good for the country means. We don't have agreement on what freedom actually means. We don't have agreement on what equality actually means, right? So the more that we seek agreements first, and then we define it, now we can have useful conversations. That will remove nearly all social media discussion, though. Because all you got to do is first ask people what they mean. Ask people to define what they just said. My experience is most of the time they can't, because nobody asked them to define what they say in their ecosystems, right? But from a coaching perspective, you're on the line with somebody, or you're doing work on stage in a workshop or whatever, asking people to define what they just said is one of the most important things, because now we know, now we can agree on what healing means, or what confidence means, or what a good relationship means, right? You have to, so the same concepts that I'm talking about can be applied internally to help somebody with their internal individual systems, or externally with intrapersonal systems, or between countries, right? So I think one of the biggest reasons that our discussions go nowhere is because there's not pre-agreement on what we're talking about, or agreement on what's true or not. Like one of the conversations that I personally am really intrigued by, because I always have been, is crime. Every statistic, every measurement and source that I've looked at, that I'm interested in, actually says that crime across the board has generally gone down for I think it's 20 years or something. But the perception of crime, which means the perception of danger, has gone up because of the media influence. So for me, I'm like, all right, let's agree. What source are we using? Is crime up or down? And what are we talking about? We're talking about white collar crime, We talking about violent crime? Are we talking about reported crime? Are we talking about convicted crime? Like, there's all kinds of nuances here. Let's agree on what we're talking about first, and then we can have a useful conversation. So the reason I think this is important is this goes back to your regulation of yourself. If you don't find agreement first, my suggestion is do not enter in that conversation, because you will dysregulate and it'll be a waste of time. Just don't do it. But if you actually do find somebody who's willing to engage from, have a conversation that you want to have, and you've got some agreement on what facts are and what measurements are and what source is and what we're actually leading to. I mean, to me, when I actually see somebody who is committed to actual conversation, I'm blown away. Like, oh my God, you actually want to discuss something from a place of like rationality? And I'll go back and forth for days sometimes. I actually have a guy, this last thing I'm going to say, I'm talking about ECCP and then we're going to wrap up. I have a guy who, I was in a Facebook fight 5 years ago with a good friend of mine, and we're going back and forth. And, I'm asking all these questions and whatever. We're not getting anywhere. This other guy comes in and joins the conversation. You guys all see that, especially on Facebook. People will come in from both sides, and there's counterattacks and all that stuff, right? And this was back in the days where I'm like, let's fight everybody. I don't care. Let's go. So I'm in there like fighting, and this guy comes in and says something, and what I did with him is I acknowledged his point of view. I think it had something to do with, I think he was a veteran. He is a veteran. And I think I said something like, what I appreciate is, from your perspective of being a veteran, I can 100, I'm making this up. I don't remember what I actually said, but it was something like that. Like, I get it from your perspective as a veteran. I get that. And I don't have that perspective, but I'm interested in this. And I'd like you to explain that. And he just went, holy shit. And then he sent me like a personal message, and he's like, bro, I've never, like, what is this? It was almost like two guys going like, wait, is this real? Because the source, and he was on, the other team, so to speak. The source, like, we were in a gang war, but we found commonality. And he appreciated that I appreciated him. And to this day, we're Facebook friends. And to this day, we engage in all kinds of really good conversations, and we agree on nothing. Hardly anything do we agree on. But it's always what I would say productive conversations, because we respect the different philosophies, and we respect the validity and now it's to the point where he posts sometimes and tags me in it because he wants to get my opinion on it. He just tagged me in something like 2 days ago. He's like, I can't wait. I want to hear what Sean has to say about this. Not because he thinks I'm like, like I'm the source of rightness or anything, but he appreciates the new perspective that I always bring into the conversation, and I appreciate his. And it came from a fight, and I didn't know him before. So my point is, it's possible. It's very, very rare. But if you regulate yourself and you ask some of these questions, you can actually invite people into conversations that wouldn't have happened anyway, otherwise. Or you can just realize, we have no agreement here. We have assertions. There's no grounding. This is a waste of my time. And instead of getting all dysregulated in your body and emotional and getting frustrated and then being reactionary and then losing time or not being present with your family, you can avoid all that stuff and go, we're not dealing with anybody that's serious. And let's be honest, most of the people on social media, the keyboard courage people, a lot of the people on social media, at least, it's been estimated that 1/3 of social media accounts are fake. That's not their avatar. That's not their name. So a lot of times we are literally in conversations with people who are hiding behind alter egos. Like we're not even dealing with, this is not even a real person. I mean, it's a real person behind the keyboard, but it's not, it's an alter ego. So there's no level of seriousness here. So I hope that some of this discussion has, can be applied to yourself and applied to however you want to operate in the world. From a coaching standpoint, if you understand a lot of these fundamental concepts, then it'll help you be more stable yourself. It'll help you in your journey as a coach, in your journey as an entrepreneur. It'll help you, I think, put a magnet out there that attracts less people, but more interested people in what you want to do, right? So quality over quantity. And ultimately, it'll help you like regulate your life and have more control and at least understand yourself and keep chipping away at those layers of clay and hopefully access the Buddha that's inside you and hopefully figure out the recipe that's going to allow you to succeed as an authentic leader in this world. And I think this world is calling for authentic leadership like never before. And it's not easy, but it is possible. And so I honor and acknowledge any of you so much for sharing whatever your voice is in any way, whether it's politics or any other controversial topic inside of coaching or personal development or whatever your beliefs are. Like just be authentically aligned as much as you can, and that's the best chance at success, especially when part of that measurement is fulfillment. That's my ultimate invitation to all of you. So speaking of invitation, with the last few minutes that I have here in this 90-minute session, I want to talk about ECCP again. If this is enticing to any of you, if it's intriguing, interesting to any of you, and you want to actually do some of this work, we do it in ECCP. It's a 5-day certification course that helps you deep dive from an immersion standpoint, all the things that we're talking about here. It's the second step. Oh, I forgot to say this first time. If you join ECCP, the first step, BCC, is included with it. If you're not already in BCC, you get step 1, which is introductory information, and step 2 together. Step 2, ECCP, is happening on April 28th through May 2nd, which is a Monday through Friday. It's all online, so you don't have to pay for the expenses of travel and hotel and all that. We've been running it a bunch of times online, and so it's pretty smooth going. It's also, the ticket is 2 years, meaning you can buy a ticket now, especially with a discount price. We have 35% off discount. You can buy the ticket now, and you could use it 2 years from now. You don't have to use it immediately if you can't make these dates coming up. But it's a way for you to take advantage of the discount and use it any time in the next 2 years. So ECCP is immersion. That's why it's so powerful. That's why it's so transformational for people. That's why it's so life-changing for a lot of people, because it's immersion, right? And what we pace you through online is an experiential process of mastery. It's 4 different levels of learning, and those levels are required in your evolution toward mastery. Most people will never get to level 2, stage 2, but most people expect stage 4 results from stage 1 effort. That's why it's never going to work. It can work for every single person. Every single person can study mastery of human behavior and learn it. Every single person can. Most people won't, because it's too confusing, it's too uncomfortable, it's too long, they don't know about it, whatever. Most people just won't do it. Most people won't get to stage 2 and real deep immersion. And that's why we teach it this way, is because this is what's missing, I think, for most people, from my assessment. See, my assessment based on grounding. Then my assertion is most people don't get to stage 2 because of all the various reasons. So if you really want to go deep dive into this embodiment world and leadership and coaching and all that, you have to study human behavior. There's quite a few things that you have to study, but they're all individually simple. It's just they collide with each other and make a very complex human, right? So language and memories and decisions, all the things you see on the slide here inside this human head, meta programs and values and beliefs and perceptions and neurological experiences and drivers and state and deletion and distortion and generalization and internal representational systems and tonalities and body language and tiredness and health, like all those things are elements and factors in the pinball machine of the human brain and the human body. Embodiment is where you look at how the human body is holding on to things, how we're holding on to traumas, how we're suppressing emotions, how we feel safe or dangerous in certain scenarios. That's all embodiment. The intellectual work is how our brain is processing information, and the beliefs that we have and the assertions and the stories that we're telling, all that stuff is like the attic, right? So the attic and the basement both need to be cleaned, and then they can work together and give us the best experience possible on the main floor. But if you only go to one but not the other, you cannot have a holistic experience of your life. You can't only clean the attic or only clean the basement and not the other. They have to be cleaned separately, but they have to work together. And then you can have what I think is the most enriched, fulfilling experience on the planet. And if you choose to learn this stuff, then you can make that you can build the capacity to build that leadership for other people as well. And one of the things that we like to say is you have the ability to make sounds with your mouth and change the way somebody experiences the rest of their life above ground. How about that? I mean, that's crazy. You know, you understand this stuff, you ask questions, you ask distinctions, you pick out assertions, you question their assumptions, you help them change their beliefs, you help understand where the conflicts are overlapping and all that stuff. And then you can fundamentally change somebody's life. But you have to study life change. You have to study human transformation. You have to study human behavior at a deep level, and you have to experience it at an immersion level. So that's what ECCP is. It's 5 days, as I said. It's deep dive comprehension, 4 different levels of mastery. You get a certification with it. The 4 different levels are learning the information, then watching the coaching demonstrations and watching what's going on, then practicing the coaching as a coach, and experiencing the coaching as a client. Those are the 4 different levels that are required in order to even approach mastery. Most people will never approach mastery because they won't do this immersion work. And if you don't do the immersion work, mastery is impossible. Without mastery, certainty is impossible. Without certainty, influence is I want to say influence is impossible if we define it a different way. But healthy, what I would say, influential transformation is impossible. You just have to be in the classroom. You have to be in the classroom, right? You have to study the things that are going to give you the things that you really want to do, the things that you want to do, right? Alignment all the way through, right? So there are a lot of coaching tools that we'll give you, but primarily we're going to teach you how to lead and coach holistically. When to coach, why to coach, how to decide, how to discern, how to pivot, how to adjust. All those things are way more important than the tools that you learn. So ECCP is a lot more about the holistic understanding of coaching. And that's where the rootedness comes from that I've been talking about this whole time. That's where grounding comes from. That's where getting your feet on the floor comes from. You need to understand it at a high level, and then you can understand a lot of the details. Most people are just trying to learn like that the part of the iceberg that's above water, and they don't understand anything that's below water. And the majority of the iceberg is below water. The majority of coaching is below water. The majority of mastery is invisible to the amateur eye. I think about 95% of mastery is invisible to the amateur eye. So if all you're going to do is focus on what you can see and never study what's invisible, then you can never approach mastery. That's what ECCP really is in a 5-day course. You're going to be introduced to a group of people too that can provide you a support system that you might not have ever felt before. The support system when people come together and are committed at this level is phenomenal. It's almost impossible to articulate. So we're going to take you into the depths of human behavior with your experiences, with your understanding, with your practice. We're going to help you develop skills. We're going to help you develop confidence. We're going to help you develop all the things that I think are required for stability and leadership and all the stuff that I've been talking about. And then you can talk about Trump, or you can talk about Biden, or you can talk about Musk, or you can talk about Hunter, or you can talk about Russia, and you can talk about all these things that are combustible triggers for people, but you can talk about it from a grounded place and either recognize, or you can talk about their beliefs, and you can talk about their traumas, and you can talk about their values, and you can talk about their conflicts. You can illuminate the things that are going on inside their internal system that also need to be illuminated in order for us to untie the knots. You can't untie a knot that you haven't exposed, right? You got to know where the issue is in order to send the solution. But you have to understand what's happening in human behavior in order to ask the questions to expose the answers. And I just think a lot of people, when it comes to human behavior, are getting really good at hitting the wrong target. Getting good at hitting the wrong target is actually more dangerous than missing the wrong target. If you have the wrong target, I hope you miss. If you have the wrong target and get good at hitting it, then your life won't change because your target's wrong, but you think it should change because you're hitting the target. And that creates a level of frustration, infuriation, exhaustion, embarrassment. It creates all kinds of things because, like, I'm hitting the target. How come my life isn't changing? Well, because you're aiming at the wrong one. I don't know what to tell you. So much of coaching and leadership is identifying the right target in the first place. And then we have a chance. But you got to understand all these elements, right? So we talk about language, we talk about traumas, and we talk about decisions, and we talk about trust. We talk about trust. My sister just posted a quote that I've been using for a long, long time. I love it. It's a bird sitting on a branch is not afraid of the branch breaking because the bird doesn't source its trust in the branch, but in its own wings. Everything. So we spend a good amount of time diving into trust and triggers and connection and beliefs, just like all the things. And it is it's transformation. That's really what it's about, is providing transformation. We do have a discount going on right now. You can go to coachshansmith.com/ECCP if you're interested in any of this, and you can type in TST35 for 35% discount on the pay in full option. We have 5 of those available, and you can use it at any point in time over the next 2 years. So if you can't make this next one coming up, which is April 28th through May 2nd, then you can use it. We do it about every 6 months. You can do it at any point in time. Here's my bold promise to you. If you do the work will do you. If you immerse yourself into the work, when the work saturates you, you cannot help but be transformed. If you get in the water will cause your saturation to occur, right? You can't jump in the water and not get wet from the water. So if you immerse yourself in the work will immerse itself in you. And then you can have inside out transformations. And then you can lead from this place of rooted certainty, not fake certainty, not overcompensation, but rooted certainty. And I think it is the most noble choice that you could possibly make, to study something that's going to change not just your life, but change other people's lives, and hopefully put out what you want to influence the world with, right? Put a ripple effect out there. Jennifer took our course, I think 6 years ago, and she said she grew more in 5 days than she had in 5 years of, I think she had gone through a lot of therapy during that time. And Carnell says it's the absolute representation of the word transformation. So you have to be in the right classroom, and you have to be in the classroom right. If you stay in second grade for 20 years, you'll never learn algebra, because algebra is not taught in second grade. So it doesn't matter how long you've been learning something. You need to make sure that you're learning what you want the outcome to be. You need to be in the right classroom that teaches mastery. You cannot get mastery from a classroom that doesn't teach it. nor can you get mastery in a classroom that is teaching mastery, but you're not set up to consume or learn mastery. You got to be in the right classroom. You got to be in the classroom right. If you do that and commit to that, then you have a chance. And I think it's the only way to deal with the turbulence that we have in our world, personally, just living your life, but also from any level of influence, any level of entrepreneurship, any level of sales, marketing, messaging, all the things you want to do. If you want to help other people, you have to be embodied in your certainty. Otherwise, there is no possibility. It's just going to be too dangerous. It's going to be too scary. You won't have enough emotional control. You won't know how to regulate. You just won't. You have to do the work on yourself at a deep, deep embodied mastery level. Otherwise, you won't be prepared. So for any of you that want to join us, we'd love to have you. ECCP, normal ticket investment is $19.97. You can get 35% off. Or we have an 8-month payment plan of $249 that's extended way out. We wanted to get the payments down less than $250 to make it more accessible to more people. Because I really, truly think, this might sound cheesy, but I really, truly think the world is calling forward real, authentic, insecure, imperfect people to just be real leaders. Not fake leaders, not influencers according to all the algorithms and all the vanity metrics, but real people helping real people with real people problems. That's a good enough opportunity. You don't need to try to sexy that up with any hyperbole. That story's already sweet as it is. You can learn how to change people's lives with sounds that you make from your mouth. I mean, come on. You don't need to learn how to do that in 7 days or less. You don't need to learn how to get high ticket clients in the next 10 days because most of those things are fake anyway. But if you learn how to increase your quality from a leadership standpoint, I think what's available around the corner is something that you currently cannot comprehend. I know I couldn't comprehend it. And even when I experienced it in 2005 on the piano bench in the crowded hotel lobby, there's no way I could understand what was in front of me and what was inside of me and what was available to me and the depth of connection, communication, introspection, healing. It's impossible to know. And so ECCP is really a place to prepare those of you that want to be embodied transformational leaders. It's a place to help you solidify or start that journey wherever you are on your journey. So if you have any questions about it, let us know. Please put a comment, send an email, tag us on social media, tag me personally, wherever you want to have the conversation. And if you want a one-on-one consultation, you can go to coachseansmith.com/consult and sign up for a consultation there. And we'll send you out a little questionnaire and see if we can help with whatever you're going on, with whatever is going on for you. So listen, guys, my 90 minutes is just about up on this State of the Coaching Industry Part 2. ECCP is somewhat like this in the sense that, you know, we dive, we scuba, we talk about all these different, you know, possibilities, and it's a flowing kind of thing. No ECCP is ever the same as anything before because we have a new group of humans in it, and I'm different, and things are different in the world, and so it's this beautiful co-creation over 5 days. We never know exactly what we're going to do in what time frame. We don't know the details of all of it, but we know the outcome. You know, we know the topics that we're going to hit. We just don't know when and how deep. All those things are up, you know, for organic creation. And it has to be that way because mastery is messy, healing is messy. There's no such thing as a linear, predictable road to the human. We're just too complex. So if anything, if you're not going to join us in ECCP, stop, please. This is my invitation. And I don't mean it to sound dismissive. I don't mean it to sound shameful. But please stop falling for fake ideas. There are no easy solutions to systemic problems. There are no quick fix band-aids to things you've been dealing with for 30 years of your life. Those things do not exist. At the very least, be as sober as you possibly can with the distinctions that we've talked about with regulating yourself, with knowing yourself, with discerning, with looking at alignment as much as you possibly can. Don't disrespect yourself by reducing yourself into a number that fits into somebody else's machine or somebody else's assembly line. You are way more valuable than that. And you have a unique recipe. And if your recipe was already created before you showed up, it's not your recipe because you weren't there when it was created. But you do have a recipe for love, for health, for success, for finances, for mastery in coaching, for whatever it is you're out for. You do have a recipe because you are the most important ingredient. And the recipe needs to be built around your most important ingredient. So if you're not going to join us, this is the work that has to be done. If you're not going to do it with us, you have to do it somewhere else. Otherwise, you just won't have the embodiment to handle the turbulence. And it's not fast. It's not easy necessarily. It's not necessarily comfortable, but it's worth it. And if you want to be a leader, it's the only way, according to my definition. So with that, everyone, thank you for being here. I acknowledge all of you that are contributing energetically or writing in comments and so forth. I'll read the comments afterwards. So if I didn't address anything that you typed in, it's not because I'm ignoring you. It's because I didn't read the comments. Well, I guess that's kind of ignoring, but not intentionally. It's not like I read the comment but didn't want to talk about it. I just haven't been looking at the comment section. And so stick around with us. You know, we're doing a lot more of these training sessions. We're talking about all kinds of skill set mastery in the coaching world, and challenge too. Challenge anything that I said, or offer a different perspective. You know, give a different set of grounding, or make a different assertion. Like, I welcome all of those challenges, as long as it's good faith and good intentions, and we're not just shooting arrows at each other. Because that's the way to strengthen our unity. Actually, is to appreciate and realize that difference isn't a threat. We live in a world where sameness equals safety and difference equals danger. And it's actually the opposite, I think. But we need to appreciate the value of different perspectives, different experiences, different lessons, different worldviews. We need to appreciate the value of difference so that we can put all these different puzzle pieces into our puzzle and have the strongest puzzle possible. Whatever that looks like to all of you, I wish you the best in all of it. If we can support you, then we will. And if not, then we'll just root for you. So make your mark however you can. Appreciate you all. Take care. We'll see you in the next session. The next session. I hate how fast this went. That's the truth. All right, you guys. Bye-bye.